We got a full house, we got a long agenda today, so why don't we go ahead and get started. I believe we've got a quorum. Let's call the meeting to order. And with that, let's take a moment and reflect on what we're going to be doing here for the next several hours, because I think we have an extensive agenda, and give some thought to that as we get ready to start our meeting. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome our new trustees. With us, two new appointees from the city. We have trustee Carl Tex Morgan. There he is, hiding out in the end over there. Welcome, Tex. I believe he's originally from Houston, spent some time in New York, has come back down here and is currently ruling geekdom, I believe. And we're looking forward to working with you. Also, a new trustee is Lester Bryant. And Lester is joining us as well. He's a homegrown product, Sam Houston High School graduate, but spent time working technology in the New York and the Washington D.C. and Atlanta area before coming back to town, and continues to contribute in our community. So we're looking forward to working with them. We're glad you're here because we've had a couple of meetings where we barely had a quorum, and so we need more hands. We got a big agenda today with the budget. They just joined, they were just appointed last Thursday. Monday they had a 3-hour briefing on the budget, and today they got a 3-hour orientation, and so now they're here and ready to take action. And welcome aboard. Look forward to working with y'all. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff. Do you have any additional announcements to make?
Sure, I have 3 quick announcements. First of all, last Saturday night, we held the opening of the exhibit of the Employee Art Exhibit and Contest, which is made possible through the National Arts Program. It's at the Westside Multimodal Center in the lobby. There's a large variety of art that was created by existing employees, retirees, and their family members. The best in show is a transit police officer who probably you saw in the lobby. Dennis Jumanjan was the best of show. And Daniel Rodriguez, where are you, Daniel? In the back. He was the first place winner in the professional photography, the professional category for his photography, so congratulations to you as well. Carrying on with the arts theme, on Friday, we will be debuting the publication of our 5-year book of poetry and art exhibit at the Bill House Arts, Primrose at Monticello Park, 2803 Fredericksburg Road. We have had 5 years of poetry on the move, where we put poetry that is developed by either students or adult professionals. It's teamed with artwork that is prepared by students, and we put that artwork on our buses. The grand winner is always wrapped on the outside of the bus so the whole city can see that. We prepared a book of the 5 years, the 50 winners over that period of time. And if you come, I will recite the first and last poem that I ever wrote. And when you hear it, you'll know why it was the last. So that is at 5:30 on Friday. And then lastly, on a more serious note, I want to recognize the fact that we have 2 people who have received a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting, and those are Orlando Gallego, who's a plan administrator. Orlando. And Steve Lange, but Steve admits that it's really Rick Betts that does all the work. So Rick, stand up as well. Rick and Steve. And Kathy, it's probably you that do the work as well, right? So thank you very much for all your efforts for VIA, and that's my report.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have an extensive agenda, including adopting the budget and a number of other items. I know we're going to be making some changes on the agenda, but first of all, we want to acknowledge the attendance of our citizens and ask for our citizens to be heard section.
Mr. Chairman, we have 7 citizens to be heard tonight, and the first one is Brian Morgan.
Mike, please, thank you. How y'all doing? Yeah, I want to address some issues which I think was kind of pretty harsh and kind of dirty. I had to take the bus different places, all because of one driver, just because of his behavior. Yeah, I might have said and did some stuff I wasn't supposed to, but I apologize for that, but still, it gives him no right to be very rude to me. And he's been driving for 30-something years, and it's pitiful that you can't get on the bus without drivers being courteous to us. I feel that they bring their personal problems from home and then take it out on us. It's like people throwing mud in our face. And I just think my punishment, not being able to catch the bus at Randolph, just seems dirty because I'm having to call people for rides. I'm having to just give them gas money, and people are starting to complain already. And that's why I'm here today, because I think not only the drivers, but the transit police officers, they can handle stuff a little bit better in how they handle different situations, because I feel that the drivers can do wherever they want, and that's not right. I feel that the transit police are taking the driver's side, but we have to be protected too, and I feel it's stupid. I'm just saying that if it wasn't for us catching the bus, they wouldn't have no way to pay their bills. I just think maybe they should just, if they're gonna be rude, then we might as well be rude back, but I'm not raised like that. My family and me and myself are just decent people, and we try to be that way. And it's just stupid. I just feel that we have to put up with their crap all the time. I'm just saying that I hope this issue gets resolved. What's my time up? I just feel that the transit police should look at my one-year case to see if it'll change, because this is just hard on the people I depend on. And the bus that I take to go to my house, I can't take it at Randolph no more. All I just want is just for everybody to just keep an eye on the bus drivers and just try to, I just feel that they're kissing somebody's butt. I don't know if it's me, but I just feel it's a kissing butt program here at VIA. I'm just saying that I'm not trying to start nothing, but I just want these issues resolved as quick as possible. Then I could recommend VIA to my family and friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
Arturo Titian.
Okay, thank you kindly. My name's Arturo Titian, and I'm an employee, ex-employee of VIA. I'm proud to say that. I started in '78 when VIA started, and I worked 19 years straight, a perfect driving record, but VIA pulled me off the bus. At 19 years straight, perfect driving record, pulled me off, and they said, you have to go see a psychiatrist. I said, what? A psychiatrist? You have to go and see him, this week, coming Monday. Fine. I went, and the psychiatrist told me I had to be locked up for a week. VIA worked this out with a psychiatrist for me to get locked up for a week, and I had no choice but to do it. And after a week's time, they let me out, and then VIA told me, you're not coming back to work. We'll pay you a retirement fee, but you're not coming back to work. I had to wait till I had 20 years, and then VIA said, okay, we're going to pay you retirement pay, but it's going to be the minimum, $1,100, $1,200 a month retirement pay. And I worked like that for I work like that, and then I'm still a retiree, but I'm not getting paid what I should, compared to the other drivers that had, good driving record. And I want to know what business Via had sending me to a doctor without my permission and getting me locked up for a week. So if somebody wants to help me in the back here, somebody wants to help me, I would appreciate, help from anyone on the board. And I would appreciate anyone from the board helping me. And like I said, I need help, and I would appreciate, sir. It's an honor for me to be here. Thank you kindly, sir.
Candy Ramirez.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, Candy, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Candy Ramirez, and I'm here representing my family, the Ramirez family, in regards to the 5 Points property, which right now, thanks to the VIA board and the attorneys hired by VIA, we are now in the process of condemnation, and we are doing our best to forestall this terrible event to our family. I have passed out, or someone has passed out to you, the latest letter from my attorney to the VIA attorneys and to the board, supposedly, and I thought it was a very good offer that the family had decided that since we still want to be part of the 5 Points area, since the family has owned the property for over 70 years, and we know that there are changes that are coming that are going to have a real beneficial impact to the area. For example, I'm talking about the $1.7 million that is going to be done to renovate the San Pedro Park. I'm also talking about the maintenance of the sidewalks and planting of greenery on Flores Street. And I'm also talking about the San Pedro Creek feasibility study, which is further on down the road. We are not in the mindset right now to sell the property. The property at one time was an investment property for us after the 2 or 3 buildings were knocked down at the property. So we have gone through condemnation once before, and they took all the buildings that were on the property, and we were left with the property. And I say to you that if someone from VIA had had enough foresight, they should have made plans to acquire the property when they were knocking down the buildings. So now you're asking my family to go through another condemnation process, which is very, very terrible. If anyone has ever lived through something like that, you know how awful it is. On the second, basically, so on this first page that's been handed out to you, we talk about donating the property. And of course, we got the reply that it was not acceptable. I'm still not clear why we cannot donate the property for 3 years or so that you all and we can see that the property is going to go through a huge renovation in the next couple of years. And we want to be part of that. We don't want to cast it away right now. We think that there's future, and we want to stay there to be a part of that. On the second page, you see that I have included the cover of the Spanish Acequias, written by Wayne Cox. He was a very formidable person that was always interested in the history of San Antonio, in particular the San Pedro Park area, the Presidio, and all of the things that began in this area of San Antonio. Without this investment of the Presidio and the people, the Canary Islanders and the priests doing the acequias and doing what they had to do, there would have been no crops that would have been grown in the area. And so the acequias, I have someone that is going to donate their time. Eddie?
Do you donate your time, sir? Mr. Eddie Salinas donates his 3 minutes to Candy Ramirez.
Thank you. Anyways, so to continue, so this was a very important, historical, significant area of the city. And without this area, San Antonio would not have been able to feed and grow the people that were coming in to settle in the area. So if you look at the third page, I have highlighted for you in red brackets, and I'm going to quote because this is the last page of the book. It's a very small little book, and it's called, it just says that another aqueduct, most probably also of stone, reposes buried and forgotten where the Upper Labor and San Pedro Acequias crossed just east of the 5 Points intersection at Fredericksburg Road, North Flores, and just northwest of downtown. So basically, we know that their historical significance for the acequias being on the property, and we know that it's of great value to this community for further research to be done to it. On the last page, this page right here, ladies and gentlemen, it's a map that I got from Kay Hines, who's with the Historical Preservation Office of the City of San Antonio. And for your benefit, I have highlighted in red where the 5 Points property sits with diagonal lines, and then the major streets that are there. So I think that we have been very fair in trying to work this out, to negotiate, and I don't think that we have been treated fairly. I think that after so many years of having the property, just when the tree is beginning to give fruit and flower, we're being asked to sell it, and we are not ready to do that. I have spoken to other architects that used to work in the city of San Antonio that are part of, or used to be part of the Historical Preservation Office, and they also agree that there needs to be more research on this. I think that if you all are fair, and if you can look a little bit into the future, you're going to see that there is something of value that I'm saying to you today. And I wish that you all had permission to speak to me and ask me questions. It amazes me as a parliamentarian that no one on this board ever asks any questions of the people or the citizens to be heard. I think that's a sin because I don't think that there's enough communication between the board and the citizens to be heard, and I think you all stand behind a protective veil, and I don't think it's fair to the people that you serve. I don't think I have anything else to say unless someone else would like to ask me a question, which I doubt very much you will not do so. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your volunteerism.
Maria Gomez. Maria Gomez.
My name is Maria Gomez, and I live at 802 West Poplar. And I'm also president of the Cinco Puntos Community Organization. To piggyback on that issue about the 5 Point bus stop, I don't believe that there should be a bus stop there. I travel that area on a daily basis, and I see people running across the street trying to catch the bus on wheelchairs, on bikes, and it just creates a hazard. We've already had one fatality there, and it cost the city a lot of money, and probably Villa also. I don't think they should have a bus stop there because there's other areas where they could make a bus stop so that the people wouldn't have to try to cross what is considered 3 or 4 lanes. I think that that's an injustice for everybody. On another note, I have also been trying to schedule somebody from VIA to come and talk to our organization about the VIA chemical spill and the cleanup. And I have called VIA several times, and I haven't been able to find anybody that knows anything about it or is willing to come and talk to our citizens. I think VIA has a responsibility when a citizen calls to have their employees informed about what is going on, especially in Cinco Puntos, that they are part of our community. Thank you. Also, thank you for your time. Where are you? Thank you.
Ferris Hodge.
Thank you. A lot of people are unset to wage the way the bus drivers treat people, and sometimes it do happen. Some of y'all buses, it's a lot of black smoke coming out of the top, and I don't know why that started happening just recently. The board members, we was outside at 4 o'clock, and they would not let us come in here and sit down. And that's wrong. I've been to the city, the county, the school district, or whatever, and they let you come in an hour and sit down and relax. Now, I don't know who's in charge of VIA, but you need to talk to your staff about keeping us out there until 4:30. That's wrong. Crossroads Park and Ride, I told y'all about the loitering. We was not loitering. Mr. Lou Miller, one of y'all former board members, he was here. The time that I first spoke in July, he said he had the same similar incident at Randolph Park and Ride. The guy was going to physical, drove him out of the Randolph Park and Ride. He said he had been sitting maybe 2 or 3 hours. So what? You're not bothering nobody. You're relaxing and everything. It was July the 4th. The security threw everybody out of the Crossroads Park and Ride. And I was the last one. He come up to me talking about, what time your bus come? And all crazy stuff. Cussed at one lady. Other lady in the restroom knocked on the door. So it's a lot of rudeness going on with y'all security. And I don't like what's going on. I want y'all to let me advertise for VIA. And my song will be the old song. It's so easy when you take the bus. Feel VIA? Okay, VIA Trans, my brother said they are the new vans that y'all have, they go down to the floor. And it's a stronger ramp, and he likes the way it is. Y'all don't have straps on the inside, and y'all should in case they have a wreck. Everybody would be hurt. The downtown sidewalks, Mr. Businio, the downtown sidewalks are filthy. When you was the city manager, you made sure all those sidewalks are clean. So I talked to Lou Miller about that today. So y'all need to get together with the city. People in wheelchairs, their hands are just filthy, like that. And then, I already talked about y'all letting me advertise. In the Primo bus, I still don't like the Primo bus. Y'all need to put one more bus on the Leon Valley. Your buses are running late. And the last thing I want to talk about, y'all bus drivers sit 3 and 4 hours in the seat. And they're going to have heart attack, they're going to have bad liver, bad kidneys. They have to be able to get off that bus and go to the restroom and take a 15-minute break. Y'all cannot keep them at that seat and tell them they can't eat while they're on the bus. Something's wrong. So I don't want y'all to get sued because y'all not treating y'all's employees right. And then just one more thing. I want the transcript, Mr. Presidio, of the board meeting that y'all had last week.
Willie Mae Clay.
So if y'all give me that transcript, I appreciate it. All right.
Good evening. And I'd like to extend a hand of welcome to the new board members. Let me tell you, you're in for a ride. And I hope you'll have your seat belts on. All right. It's good to be here again. I missed you last month. My purpose for coming here today, talk about two things. One, I want to let you know that the paratransit staff had a workshop, another workshop, and let me emphasize a good workshop. The workshops that are being held are getting better. And one of the significant things about the workshop that was held on the 6th of October, not only did it have an agenda that the staff brought to us, but it included a question and answer section that the group previously suggested that the staff have. As a result of the Q&A, something resulted out of that. We were given an opportunity to suggest 2 things that would go on the agenda for next time. I don't know when the next workshop will be scheduled, but I'm looking forward to having one of the things that I suggested be on the agenda, and that's the 30-minute window. For the new board members, let me just quickly describe that because I don't want to take up all of my time. The 30-minute window is one in which the VIA approved last year and gave the staff the authority, the driver of paratransit, VIA Trans, as you know it, if the van were to arrive 10 minutes prior to the negotiated time is one that we agreed on. For example, if I asked for 12 o'clock and I happen to get a 12 o'clock, the van arrives 10 minutes to 12, I have to get on it if it arrives 10 minutes before 12. Now, if it doesn't arrive 10 minutes before 12, this is the 30-minute window, we still have to wait and wait and wait. And we can't call and inquire about the status of that ride until 20 minutes after. I don't think it's fair that we have to wait 20 minutes after the negotiated time to inquire about the van. Now, understand me. I'm not saying do away with the 30-minute window because I know you're not going to do that. But I'm saying for the the purpose of accommodations and fairness, if we have taken 10 minutes of our time to wait for a van that should have arrived 10 minutes prior, we should not have to wait 20 minutes before we inquire about it. It was supposed to be on time. Okay, well, it wasn't on time. Give us an opportunity to inquire, say, 10 minutes after the negotiated time. You still have 10 minutes left for the van to get there. But let us make an inquiry because the staff already knows where the van is and when it's scheduled to arrive.
There
So
are no
I'm
more citizens
asking
to be
you
heard.
to be fair. That's what I'm asking. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you very much.
Does that complete our citizens?
Conclude citizens to be heard.
Let me just say, I thought that we had a policy that we do not respond to citizens, and I'm told that we can change that. It's an ad hoc policy, we can change that. No? I see the lawyers shaking their head.
It's in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Unless, the Attorney General has been very strict on the interpretation, unless an item is on the agenda specifically, it cannot be discussed. So when citizens raise items that are not on the agenda, the board is limited to simply asking staff to respond or placing the issue on a future agenda, but the board cannot discuss the matter.
Okay. See, I told you that's what I was told. So it's not an informal policy, it's a formal policy. But I do think it's important, there is follow-up that the staff does, and there's a report that goes back, and I want to be sure that feedback goes back to the citizens as well. And so I'm hoping that feedback does go back to the citizens as well.
I want to make sure that the board receives the feedback as well.
David, go ahead, yes.
If I may. And I may be incorrect because there may be different rules when it comes to a municipality and it comes to a meeting like this. But the board or the chair of the board, I believe, can respond with factual information. And so if someone asks a question, You can answer only giving a factual information. If someone wanted to know when the last time something happened, you could give the date of the last time something happened or something like that. But nuanced opinions could not be discussed. So, like if someone came and asked about an ongoing legal proceeding, the chair of the board could say that is subject to an ongoing legal proceeding, and I'm not at liberty to say. So there can be some information that goes back and forth. Or
Thank
back.
you. And so if we, a factual information, for example, would be to find out the name of the driver who was driving this bus that was rude. Is that factual information?
If you knew that, yes.
If I knew it,
I
no.
mean, if
No, if we can't ask the citizen what the name of that driver was.
based on the Attorney General interpretation, if you just receive the name and the discussion stops there, that's fine. It's just you cannot get into discussion on the issue. It's not on the
Okay.
agenda.
And Mr.
Bobby, do you want to add
Chairman,
something?
that's the only point I wanted to make. I mean, we have to strictly adhere to what the law says. We can't get outside the bounds. We got to maintain transparency, and that's why the law exists. And so, Mayor, I appreciate the comment, but I think once these folks have an issue, you know, one of our staff folks can go have a conversation with them and find out what the issue is and get information from Ferris and find out where that is. And only Ferris, because I've been seeing you to talk for way too long. And so, a long time. And so, and that would help address those issues. And so I want to make sure we're respecting what the government code says and we're doing what we're supposed to do.
Well, I would just ask that, I know the staff does follow up. I want to be sure that they give the reports back to the trustees and feedback back to the citizens as well. I think that that's important. Okay. With that, let's move on with the agenda. The next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. The board has had a chance to review that. Is there a motion?
I'd like to pull item 5B, please.
5, which one?
5B, as in boy,
5 Bravo, okay.
or Bravo.
Okay, we're going to pull item 5 Bravo, 5B.
I'll make a motion for
Anything
the
else?
balance of consent.
Is there do you make a motion to approve the rest of the agenda?
For the balance, excluding 5B.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda without 5B. I want to point out and for the record that y'all were distributed an updated copy of the memo for item number 5M. And so you all have a copy of that revised memo. So with that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. And then we'll go over item 5B. Is somebody going to make do you need a presentation on that?
No, I don't, and really just a brief comment. We went through this at a couple of other committee meetings, and this is kind of on my regular ongoing effort on MBE participation. I think this procurement is a great example of finding opportunities to use local certified minority, women, veteran-owned entities. In this instance, our background, in the background document, we have a 2% requirement to use MBEs. And I don't, unless somebody, instructs me otherwise, I don't think that there's any fund restriction on this procurement. Maybe there is. But 2% out of a very small contract is, in my opinion, not acceptable. We have a good example later on in the agenda in item number 12, where the contractor, and I'm sure we'll hear from him because we had this discussion at another committee meeting last week, expects when they go bid work at local government entities, they make an effort. They have a regular, long-standing practice that's utilized across the state of Texas in using local women, minority, veteran-owned entities in their procurements, and our staff did a great job on challenging them within the bounds of the law. And this one we didn't. I know this is an option, and so I understand that from the legal perspective. All this is exercising an option, but I can't support it, and I just want to. Jeff and I have had several discussions about it, along with your staff. I appreciate the time. Don't intend on
delaying the conversation, but I just can't support the item, and I won't support anything going forward unless we make a conscious effort to go out and look at opportunities, and some will be appropriate and some won't. I think this is one that might be. So that's my point. I won't be supporting 5B.
Thank you, Mr. Pettis. I think that's a good point, though, and I do think, when I read the memo, I wondered how the 2% goal came about in terms of availability. This is a federal contract, as I understand it. Federal lobbyist contract?
No, it's locally funded, and so it is locally funded, so we have a
Right,
lot
no,
more
I'm not saying
flexibility.
federal dollars. It's a lobby, it's a
Right.
contract to do federal lobbying.
That's correct.
And
That's
there's
correct.
bound to be more than 2% availability to have relationships in Washington, D.C.
Mr. Chairman, and I've spoken with Deani about how we arrive at the 2%, and then working with Terry Dudley on it, which it appears there may be getting this up to about 3%. And Deani can explain how we arrive at these particular numbers. My understanding is that we're not given a free hand to just put any number out there. That they're done, it's not like a DBE contract that's small business, but Deani can get into the details. The other thing is this is the minimum, so that, again, contractually, the minimum is all they have to meet. However, in most instances, and even in this instance, it probably amounts to greater than 2% without getting into the particulars of that particular small business component in the federal contract with Holland and Knight. But if you need a greater or better explanation of it, Deani can tell you how they arrived at that 2%, and even with the review that we conducted, it probably would be up to about 3%, yet presently it's probably greater than 2 or 3% in that particular contract, since it's been ongoing for a year and we're looking at renewing it for a 2-year period.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick, just to save everybody a lot of time. We've had the discussion multiple times, and with staff, and you guys have indulged me from Judge. Just so you know what I understand, this is kind of a historic issue for me. You know, it's something that when I was an elected official in another body, I advocated for on a regular basis. I am not advocating today for mandates. I'm not advocating for set-asides. I'm not advocating for anything outside the bounds of the law. Our goal setting, there is room for goal setting at this entity, and so some will be appropriate when there's non-federal dollars, and others will not be appropriate. And so I want to make sure we're, again, clear and transparent and within the bounds of the law, but 3%, 2%, really insufficient, and that's just my opinion. So I'm willing to live with whatever this body decides, but I you know, as a rule, I just, it's insufficient. So I just want to let it known, and I'm still voting no at 3%.
No, and I understand. I mean, the question that I posed to the individuals that come up with the formula and the different factors is, are we in any way limited? And my understanding is that based on certain criteria, are we limited to that criteria is the good question. My understanding is that we are. And so, I mean, my own feeling is at 2%.
Now,
Obviously,
let me clear this up. Federally funded contracts, there are specific criteria that do not apply to locally funded contracts. We elected to experimentally implement a small business program on locally funded contracts and apply the same kind of process as the federal process. But we do not have to do that. We have more latitude with locally funded projects. This goal that was set a year ago was based upon a calculation as though it were a federally funded DBE type project. But we are not required to do it because it's not federally funded. I've spoken with Bobby. I think he's given some good ideas about how we could pursue in locally funded contracts a more flexible approach that would actually challenge, rather than put a number down, 2%, challenge the contractors to come up with their own approach to small business and DBE participation without a specific number that could then be part of the evaluation of the proposal with respect to reflecting our vendor diversity policy. So I believe that there's certainly something we can do with contracts like this in the future. This contract, of course, is in renewal, so we could go back to this contractor and ask them to bring back to us a proposal for increasing participation. or
I'm going to agree with what Jeff just said, and I hope the message, is relayed to Holland and Knight, who is an international law firm and does business in public spaces all across this country, and this is not the first time they've heard of this. You know it, and I know it.
Right.
And so hopefully when it comes time for the new RFP and the new goals, and if they make a concerted effort, they do, and if they don't, they don't. They get scored however they get scored, and whoever wins, wins. I think
I think
it's something the board's saying.
this is an issue that I've had questions about too in terms of how we reach our various goals. And I'm assuming it was based upon a disparity study. And I don't know if you participated in the regional disparity study that the regional agency did or not. But I would like to get a briefing on it. And I know Bobby had asked for one before, and we haven't set it up. We have new trustees, and I think it'd be worthwhile to ask for a work session and a briefing on our DBE policy and how we set those goals.
Yes,
because
sir.
I think
I
it's
think that
good
was
to
in the
get that
works.
updated.
Yeah, I had actually committed to doing so at the committee meeting where this first came up.
Right.
And I think we can also then talk about, for the locally funded projects, what alternative approaches we could have and modify that experimental process we've been using for the last year or so, 2 years.
So with that, we have this item has been pulled. Is there a motion for approval?
I have a question with regard to whether, if we don't approve this, then do we not have a federal lobbyist, or what is the upshot of that?
As of November 1st, this contract would expire. We would need to go out and reprocure. So we would.
So we have till November 1st.
Correct.
And so we can postpone this for a month till the October meeting. No?
If we reprocure, we won't be able to reprocure and bring something back next month. Now, what we could do is go to Holland and Knight and ask them again, as I said, go to Holland and Knight, ask them to put on their thinking cap, based on their other experiences, for example, bring us a proposal for how they would be more reflective of the board's policy, and then bring this contract back with their response to that.
Well, at this point, the chair has not heard a motion to approve, so as far as I'm concerned, it looks like the issue is tabled. I'm sorry?
I would make a motion to approve.
Okay.
It would have to be seconded, but only because I would like some discussion. And after we have a motion in a second, we can have some discussion, because I wanted to point out the fact that this board itself, if I look around, I mean, I'm a veteran, sitting next to a woman, sitting next to an African American. What percentage of this board is minority owned? Do you know what I mean? The fact that when we hire someone, 2% just seems so low. It's it's not reflective of our community either. Our community is not 2%. And even I just looked up while we were talking the Congress, because you could make the argument, well, they're lobbying Congress, and is Congress 2% women, minority, veteran? And even the Congress has a better representation than firms.
So you made a motion to approve?
I made a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second for that purpose.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 5B. Further discussion?
Now we can have discussion about this.
I have a question with regard, what is then the percentage of work that the minority portion of this contract is getting? Do we know that?
5%.
Oh,
That's better than 2.
But there was no goal for minority participation. The goal was for 2% small business participation.
My intent is not to cause any service gap or cause any disruption or any harm to the entity. It really isn't. And so to my fellow board members that are, considering approval, please do not, my comments are personal in nature, from the way I just think policy should be laid with this entity. I don't want to do any harm to the entity. And so if you're compelled to vote yes, please vote yes. I don't want there to be a service gap. I wanted to pull it to raise a point, and then I want to compare it to item number 12. which is just the opposite. And as more of a good example of how to procure in a different format. So I'm still voting no, but it's just,
Yes, Steve.
Ask a question. This is an extension, right?
It's an existing contract.
So could we defer this for a month, and in the interim, since it is an extension, go back to Holland and Knight and express our concerns and give them that opportunity to close the gap, and then we won't have the service interruption, unless they opt to not cooperate. Can we do that?
That is my recommendation.
Okay, so then you have to reword or do a substitute motion.
Does that need to go back to the original motion?
The motion, we'd have to vote on this motion.
You can vote
So
this
I made a
motion.
motion to approve. It was seconded. We have discussion. We would vote on that, and then they can make a substitute motion.
I think we can offer a substitute motion before we vote on this motion.
Why don't we just make a motion to table for now, pending that outcome of discussions?
I'll second that as well. That's a motion.
Overrides the motion.
You made a motion to table?
Yes, sir.
And that was seconded?
Yes, and that motion table
Motion to
overrides.
table is not debatable. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay, thank God. Motion carries. Okay, so now we can make a fresh motion, Steve.
No, but it's been tabled. So,
The whole issue is tabled.
but we have the direction on how to proceed.
I have direction on
Okay.
what to do, so we will do that.
Okay. Thank you, Bobby. Okay, let's move on with our agenda then. The rest of the consent agenda was approved. The next item on our agenda, and we're going to kind of shuffle the agenda a little bit because we know I know one of our trustees has an appointment he's got to leave for here pretty soon. And we want to be sure he's here when we go through the strategic initiatives and the budget process. And so with that, we're going to skip to item number 8, which would be the strategic initiatives presentation. And we have a quick update on that by Mr. Bob Ashcroft. This is important because the strategic initiatives update and approval is implicit in the budget that's going to be adopted here tonight as well. And so with that, and because of recognition of our 2 new trustees, it's important that we get a quick update on that. Bob?
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. As a courtesy for the 2 new trustees, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to lay a little background. I know you're new on the board and you've had some orientations, but VIA operates with 2 sets of plans. It has physical plans for the improvement in the expansion of the system, the long-range comprehensive transportation plan, smart move, and then project plans. This particular plan had a derivation about 5 years ago when the board and the senior executives of VIA said that they needed a strategic plan for the organization. How do we build VIA's capabilities and capacity to achieve the mission? And the mission really is to have a multimodal transit system. But how do we actually make sure that we have the capabilities as an organization to do that? So this is a plan, the strategic initiative is a plan for the organization itself. And the way it works, each year we go through about a 4 or 5 month process where there's an annual planning workshop that involves both the trustees as well as the senior executives. They review the past year, they review the long-term issues, they look at the coming fiscal year, and they look at special topics that are pertinent at the time. And then the results of that are used to update the current fiscal year 14 plan, which goes to the executive management team for detailed review. And then the draft goes through a review during the month of September by VIA board committees and today for final action by the board. The document itself, and you've got a 7-page draft document, and then there's 2 pages of explanatory notes. The document itself is divided into 2 parts. The first 2.5 pages looks at the long-term situation, things like mission, vision, goals, and strategies. And then starting on page 3 through page 6, we're looking at the coming fiscal year. That's fiscal year 2015, which starts next Wednesday. VIA operates on a fiscal year of October 1st to September 30th. And in that, the board and the staff identifies where they're going to focus attention. In this particular document, there are 8 strategic initiatives indicated for fiscal year 15, along with key tasks and responsible parties. So that's really the document. There's 2 pages of explanatory notes that deal with the big issues. And I will say that in the last couple of weeks, this document has gone through review by the board's Operational Oversight and Finance Committee, by the board's Planning and Project Development Committee, and last week by the board as acting as a committee of the whole. And all of the changes that came out of the review over the past couple of weeks are actually reflected in this document today. So I hope that's helped you a little bit. I know you're barraged with lots of stuff about the organization, but this is one of the key documents that comes directly from the board and the senior management, and it serves as a guide to building the organizational capacity. I'd be happy to answer any questions, general or specific, or if there's any additional changes to the document before the board takes action on it, I'll note those.
Thank you, Bob. I think the rest of the board had a chance to review it. The changes on the document were highlighted for us ahead of time. And so they reflect what we discussed at our meeting, I guess it was back in May, that we had our work session.
Correct.
And so with that, did you have any further presentation?
No, I mean, unless there's any questions or you want to change, I think, I believe that it accurately reflects all the changes going back to May 16th and up to the changes from last week. And again, they're all highlighted. If you've got color, they're in yellow. If you've got black and white, they're shaded.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make the motion to approve this, but I do want to thank Bob for all of the help that he's given us with planning, and I want to commend all of us, frankly, for putting so much time into planning and thinking forward. This document even was tinkered with in terms of what words we'd use, because it's so important for us to capture for ourselves and the community at large what we're trying to do here in the near term and also in the long term. So thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for wordsmithing with us to get it just right. And as I said, so I move to approve.
You have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? You have a second. Lester, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to clear that
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And it rolls over. In other words, we don't start from scratch. It's sort of a rolling plan. So, but yes, every year.
We do like a planning retreat, 1-day retreat on it. Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second. If there are no further questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Again, we're going to move forward quickly. We're probably going to have an extensive discussion on our 5-year, our budget and our 5-year plan and our capital projects plan. But we do have guests here from the city of San Antonio, and they're here to make a presentation on the comprehensive planning process. I want to welcome them. And let's go ahead and do that. And John, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm John Dugan. I'm Director of Planning and Community Development for San Antonio. And I'd like to bring you up to date on the new comprehensive plan process that's underway. Let's pull up the PowerPoint here. Let's see.
While you're doing that, I also have to welcome Peter Zanoni, who's Deputy City Manager.
Right, and Terry Bellamy is our new Assistant Director for Transportation Planning, who is responsible for a multimodal transportation plan, which will be of real interest to VIA. Okay, today I'm going to talk a little bit about our comprehensive plan update. We call this an update, but really We have not had a real plan here for 1997 were master plan policies. 1978 was the last time the city really adopted a complete comprehensive plan looking at all responsibilities to the built environment, so we're about 35 years behind. And so we're going to try to catch up. We're also going to try to implement the 2020 vision of the city, which is what the community wants the city to become, a world-class city, a great city with vibrant neighborhoods, great transportation, great economy. How do we get there? How do we implement that? That's what this plan's all about, implementing these 2020 visions. We're going to articulate the future form of the physical growth of the city, accommodate our growth projections, which are over 1 million people, over 500,000 jobs and households over the next 25 years in terms of the time frame of the plan, and guide strategic decision-making for annexations, for transportation planning, for SAWS, for CPS, for all the major institutions the city directs, and hopefully for all the other major institutions of the city. Guide our infrastructure, our investments, our incentives, and reconcile all the existing functional plans, which now have very different assumptions about growth and purpose, and these need to all be brought together. Other cities in Texas have done this recently because of course, this is the most rapidly growing region of the U.S., the most prosperous, and those cities know that they have to coordinate their resources and be strategic. El Paso, Austin, Fort Worth, Dallas have all recently completed new comprehensive plans similar to what we are embarking upon. Our best practices in looking around the country, and I've worked on 5 of these plans over my 40-year career as a planner. You look at population projections, you look at a community design, look at technical papers that give a rationale and go into some detail about what the issues are. You look at annexation, our strategic implementation plans about zoning and development code and subdivision regulations and infrastructure, and look at fiscal sustainability in terms of can we afford this, and if we can't afford it, how can we afford it in the future or not afford it. And look at natural resources, our financial resources, the city's infrastructure, and our economy. So we're going to be looking at all these things. We're also going to be looking at our current plans. Our current plan, the combination of plans that we have, the functional plans, are not designed to implement 2020. They're not coordinated. They're inconsistent on their growth assumptions. They don't implement any strategy. They're not strategic, and the capital improvements are not strategically coordinated to support future goals. Really, most of our land use planning in the city has been on neighborhood level planning since 1998 and not looking at these bigger citywide systemic and regional issues. So what will we look at in the comprehensive plan? Well, we're going to look at, because there'll be sort of an outline here, existing conditions, our trends, our working estimates on population and technical papers on those. We'll be looking at a growth scenario, some good opportunities. Where should we grow? Should we grow a suburban sprawl all the way to Austin? Should we look at new planned communities? Should we focus on the inner city? Someplace in between. There's several different strategies that we can pursue. We will look at housing, our natural resources, our economic development, land use, urban design, and historic preservation issues. And we will look at strategies for transportation, public investment, the military, and all of our intergovernmental cooperation with the dozen surrounding communities. And look at new annexation policies, a new capital improvement program, reinvestment, redevelopment priorities, and new development regulations, a new development code. All these things will be implementing the new plan. This will give us, and us by that I mean the City Council particularly, and of course the community in general, policy guides for prioritizing city investments, fostering new growth in all sectors of the city, not just one area, guide the future transportation plan, which is of course important to you, determine the market demand for future services, coordinate with the military. The military is doing their first all-base, whole joint San Antonio land use study, and we'll be coordinating with them. Update the urban design codes and all the implementation plans we have, and to coordinate all the functional plans like SAWS and CPS, water, sewer, and all those plans. Our process has started. It's multi-departmental. We're looking for cooperation and partners. We're requesting you to be a partner with us, both in terms of function, details, and financially. We're going to be coordinating with 2020 and 2040. We're going to call this with 2040 MPO plan. I'm on the board of directors, as are several people here, and we're coordinating very carefully with the 2040 regional plan. The technical studies are being done now. We have an infill and development capacity analysis, which I'll talk to you a little bit about in a minute, what we found from that. EPS Planning Systems out of Denver have done a really good analysis, taking every parcel of land in the county and the city and evaluating their potential for development in 10 different criteria, zoning, land capability, all sorts of things, and come up with how much land do we really have in the city that we can redevelop and develop without going out beyond the city limits. Looking at future jobs, what's our real supply? We have the supply with capacity, demand for space, for land, coming up with the economy as we see that growing in the future, and looking at how much this is going to cost in terms of infrastructure to provide sewer, water, roads for this new development. We'll be developing policy papers, about a dozen or so this coming year, and we'll be working on a big stakeholder engagement program to communicate to the whole city. We want at least 20,000, 30,000 people engaged in this process personally. And that's our goal that we're going to be setting out to do this. So what has our first phase 1 study shown us so far? Well, we are really, and we've asked our consultants, EPS out of Denver, really good consulting firm for basically fiscal impact assessments. Is this right? Are our assumptions right? These numbers we've taken from the MPO in terms of the 2040 plan. They have the state demographer behind them. It's pretty well conservative, we all think. 430,000 new people over the last decade moved into the metro area. We're projecting 1.1 million additional people just in Bexar County, not the region, by 2040. 500,000 new jobs at least, and housing units needed by 2040. So, the big question mark, where do all these people go? What do the new communities look like? How are we going to provide services for them? How are we going to give them access? And so the plan will give answers to those. So our approach has been, look at the capacity for growth, look at the demand for growth and where that could be. How much is the potential for redevelopment and infill? That's a key goal, our vision of the 2020 plan. And determine the fiscal cost and benefit of doing all that. So, to do that, the City Council appropriated $500,000 that we're in the process of spending for these studies to determine the answers to those questions. RFP in 2013 was issued for these initial studies for infill development. And as I just mentioned, that's the fiscal impact. We are going to, gone over that now about the real estate development market, the public-private partnerships, et cetera. This is what they have looked at, and we have yet to do the fiscal piece. That will be done by Christmas. What they found, basically, they divided the county into some areas, looking at the analysis of land use and potential development, infill development. They found certainly that there's a lack of, there's employment concentrations right now, of course, downtown, but more people work in other employment centers than downtown. Out along 410, the big bases, Lackland Air Force Base alone has 50,000 employees. Fort Sam Houston has 35,000. Downtown has 45,000. There's 45,000 to 50,000 at the medical center. A lot of different employment outside the city. It's called a polycentric employment growth, multiple centers, so we have to build on that. We can call these activity centers, and the ones in red are shown as existing, as we just mentioned, including up the area up there around UTSA and La Cantera Mall. Emerging ones on the south, like the Texas A&M campus, Brooks Base, up at 1604 and 35 around Rolling Oaks Mall. There's several major ones out to the west, Alamo Park area, Alamo Ranch. And we can then look at these things, these areas, as where has development happened in the past. Over half the growth in the last decade has just been in these 12 areas. And one smart growth approach would be, well, let's put as much new growth as we can in those areas to bring jobs close to housing, housing close to jobs, and link up based upon and use the transportation services we have. So we've looked at that to see how much employment potential is there based on the market analysis that was done and based upon what the growth trends seem to be on all the major economic sectors, and we have the studies if you want to see them in the county. And we can look there at the areas around the airport, the medical center, Fort Sam Houston. The increment there may be 20 to 40,000 new jobs. Central Business District, the areas around Stone Oak and Lackland, again, 20 to 40,000 new jobs. UTSA, so there's many, many thousands of jobs that could be focused in these 13 activity centers. So the housing forecast, we looked at that too. Where's all the growth going to be? The 500,000 housing units in the county? Well, this map here shows what's been approved by SALS just for a utility service agreement Approved but not built is in red, and the green or bluish color there are pending. Huge amount of expansion there on the west side up to the northwest, but primarily west, very little on the south. This is where the market wants to go, and this is where the infrastructure and utilities are being proposed. But looking at the forecast, looking at the available land, a good portion, more than half of all the vacant land that's developable in the county lies south of 410, south of South Loop 410. The market assessment here, based upon development capacity, infrastructure, zoning, and emerging markets, this assumes, this is land use now, not school districts, not other things, but basically based on land use capacity, shows that over the next 2 decades, 20% of new units could be south of 410, 22% within 410, and 23% north between 410 and 1604, and 35% in what we call the suburbs today outside of 1604. This is a major change from the current market trend, and this would be an implementation of the goals of 2020 and what we're looking at for 2040. Well, how does this happen? Well, we look at this land capacity, and this has been done for every parcel in the county, in the city, and we've come up with this kind of assessment. We looked at floodplain, topography, environment, aquifer, planned infrastructure, zoning, all these kinds of things, and came up with these numbers for those areas. Every one of these proposed or existing growth centers and emerging growth centers were analyzed in terms of capacity for growth, in terms of acres. And this can be, of course, translated into square footage. So we have here a basis then for market assessment, market studies, and transportation planning in terms of transportation analysis zones and demand for different kinds of transit services, and for modeling. Preliminary findings: the activity centers lack of land capacity only in 5 of those centers, mostly around downtown. Increased density is required to meet the demand for these centers, which could be proposed in terms of different parking, like structured parking, better access like transit, changing the zoning a bit, allowing for mixed use, new zoning districts. Those things could allow for this enhanced infill development. If we just took a little bit, 10% increase in density, we could get 60% of the jobs and 20% of the housing units and 50% of the multifamily units projected over the next 25 years in these 12 areas, which would be a huge change again from the market trends that have happened over the last 20 years. There is a lack of land capacity for housing in several of the inner sub-areas, particularly within 410 and 1604 on the north, but there will not be a lack if we use the corridors in redevelopment, the commercial abandoned areas and office parks that have been overlooked. The market has moved beyond, like on Perrin Vital. We just did a study up there and found 300 vacant acres on 2 miles of land that could be used for new housing and all sorts of new communities there if we give the right infrastructure support for that, which the cities now are going to be adopting a new tax increment development zone of TERS to do that. Additional issues: the growth pressure in western Bexar County is putting pressure on Bexar County and Medina County. We have saws going in there with infrastructure. Urban development and unincorporated portions of the county don't have the mechanisms to pay for their future. The city can't guide growth because it's not in the city. The county has no zoning. The county has no building permit requirements. There's unstructured and uncoordinated growth there. It's not a good idea to leave that in the county. There's a vision needed in these activity centers. We need to do more detailed planning around the airport, around the medical center, around the universities, and all those potential growth areas that we just mentioned to show where that new density can come in, where the mixed use can come in, how the housing can be closer to jobs, where new transit centers should be located. And then the corridors in between, how those can be redeveloped at higher intensity to support transit and other modes of transportation. We don't have a street network that supports walking or transit, and we need to look at that. So we've got these final reports from these 2 studies. We got this next one coming up for fiscal impact, and we have then the second phase coming up next month. The council is going to be approving a plan for a consulting group that will help us do a new website for outreach, do some illustrations of how these new higher intensity development communities could look like, write up the policy papers with subject matter experts. We'll be inviting the whole community to be engaged, write the actual plan document for public consumption and review, and work with our outreach program, which is going to be substantial with new community board, community advisory board and citizens advisory board that's going to be set up shortly with the city council. The plan will have policies on urban growth and form, transportation, housing, our green and healthy community, public facilities, historic preservation, the military, natural resources, environmental sustainability, jobs, and how to implement this. So this is not going to just stay on the shelf when it's done. It's going to go right into law and into CIP, IMP, bond issues, and new development code. How we're going to coordinate this, the City Council is setting up a committee to coordinate it just for comprehensive plan, but also for the new transportation plan, a water quality plan, and a new sustainability plan. They're going to coordinate all four of those, and we'll hopefully coordinate with you in your update for your transportation plan as well. And that committee will then have advisory committees. We'll be inviting VIA to participate along with 40 other major institutions in an advisory board. We'll have a citizens advisory committee. We're going to set up a Citizens Planning Institute to educate people about some of these concepts so that we have an informed public dialogue on planning and set the stage for the next 2 years for this process. So we're asking you to be involved directly, professionally, technically, and financially as partners here. We're asking you for about $250,000 to help us to do more detailed studies around the growth centers like downtown, the medical center, the airport, and to help us with the outreach program, which we think is really pretty underfunded right now, and based upon our history of explaining all of these concepts to the public, we need a lot more effort put into public outreach and education. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about our plan.
Thank you, John, for that presentation. Do we have any questions? Let me just say, we want to be partners. We want to collaborate, and as you know, we have a 2035 long-range plan. My understanding is your Assistant Director Terry Bellamy has been involved in working with our staff in reviewing this, and there's a lot of good information there. We spent $1.4 million on that plan, which is a little bit more than what y'all are spending on this so far. And so I've got here just from a work session book back in 2010, a list of about 100 slides on different figures and needs assessment and population growth and movements and travel patterns and all that. But it's clear that a comprehensive plan, it needs to all be interrelated with utility extension policies and all that. And VIA obviously must be part of that. Transportation is obviously our business, and our long-range transportation plan resulted in a plan that included, among other things, options such as additional park and ride facilities, transit centers, bus rapid transit lines, the one Primo already underway, the new one that we're looking to move forward on our plan, which is the Southwest Corridor, and plus in the long range, light rail as well. Look at some of those light rail corridors. I know those are all issues that have been discussed at the city as well. And so we want to work on that collaboratively. We urge that you take a look at the information that we have, because I think we have a good base of information to start off with. And obviously we want to participate as part of the advisory committee, but we look forward to working with you all and doing so as partners. If we're talking financial partnerships, we need to work out the details of that.
Right, and I'd be happy to come back at any kind of period you want to brief you on what's going on and where we are in the process. And we're about building a new community here, a whole different model for the city. And we know with the modeling, just what we've done so far, there's no way our existing streets, our existing freeways are going to handle this growth. There has to be other modes of transportation and a new pattern of growth. And so that's what we're about in the future here. And it's going to be, everyone can profit from it. It's just going to be different. And so there needs to be quite a good educational program.
Land use patterns, all those are totally interrelated with transportation, with utilities, and infill development, and all those issues. And I think that it's important to look at that in a comprehensive way, and I'm glad that that's being done. I would be careful going around saying too much that it's never been done in the past, because you got a former Director of Planning over here and Chief of Water Resources, a former city manager and a former city council member who've kind of been involved in this for a while. And I, before I came to work for the city, recall a city council member throwing what was called the growth sketch and throwing it into the trash can and saying that's what,
Well, that's
it was
what we
worth
don't want to have
back in
happen.
1976, 77. Becky, you remember that as well. And
No, the
so,
growth is coming. It's just how it's laid out in the city, how it happens, and that's what we're about, trying to provide the best way, recommend the best way to
Wish you
everyone
the best of luck.
about how it's going to work.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question. Mr. Dugan, does this plan, I was looking at the map, and forgive me, does this include anything for the East Point area as an emerging group?
Yeah, sure. It includes the entire city. All the
'Cause I didn't
cities,
see
all the city
anything about
limits.
that. I didn't see anything about that on here. When I was looking at the map, that's why I'm asking the question. I was a little,
Yeah, the comprehensive plan is designed to address both everything in the city limits now and everything that could be in the city limits over the next 25 years.
okay, all right.
And we also have another plan that we have other plans going too, like detailed plans for downtown and for, hopefully for around some of these major cities. The East Point is a whole another renewal plan we call Renew SA, which I'll be happy to brief you all on in the future too, but it's all about how we redevelop the inner city of San Antonio to address all of the disinvestment and be sure they get their portion of the new growth that's going to happen here.
Okay. Because if we're going to invest money in Robert Thompson, then that would just be a good match to do that.
Right, West Side Multimodal, whatever it's renamed, and Robert Thompson is going to be nucleus for a lot of new potential.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Allison?
I know this is a city comprehensive plan, but it impacts more than just the city limits of the city of San Antonio. So through the process, do you envision that the county will be involved, for example?
Oh, yes.
In areas that are not within the potential annexation areas and suburban cities?
Right.
Other entities that serve outside the city, such as VIA, such as SAW?
Sure, we're going to set up this advisory board, and the mayor's going to be sending out letters of invitation to around 40 different major county institutions, county-wide institutions, including all the most of the universities, VIA, the county, MPO, lots of different organizations that have a regional footprint and a citywide footprint.
How about the 15 or so suburban cities that would
Yeah,
be
they have an association of cities that
Council of
certainly will
Cities.
will be inviting that group. They have, I know, one representative they elect annually to represent the different cities.
Okay. And will the expanded MPO interest be included?
Yes.
So
Well,
Bernie
we're going to invite the MPO to, certainly be involved. I mean, I don't know who they're going to appoint to come yet. But of course, the expanded MPO's got the 4 counties now.
Because and I want to go in, we had a good exchange at the committee meeting that you came to last week, which we appreciate very much. But just to echo the chairman's comments, I think the collaboration is going to be extremely important. Because as I expressed at the committee meeting, I'm afraid that we have our 2035 plan that we're going to be proceeding with. So I'm concerned that if there isn't the full collaboration, we're going to be in for a collision at
Right,
some point.
because all this is about land use and maybe changing densities, intensities, locations of growth, and we have to have the same assumptions to move ahead on.
And I think there's also some value to just take a look at what's going on to make sure we don't duplicate work. I mean, I know we have a whole department for information for the public and save the city from doing duplicate work on that side, and maybe via doing some duplicate work on strategizing locations to purchase land and the such.
True. Yeah, where for instance, new stations are located is going to be a huge nexus for economic growth, and we all need to be in sync on that before those are tied down.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for coming forward and making the presentation. I think, as I said at the committee meeting, planning is intelligent, so I'm glad that we're seeing the city do that. It's alarming. I think I heard you correctly, but that the city maybe hadn't done planning like this in 35 years. Is that what I heard?
That seems to be the case.
Yeah, and that's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I was a kid then, right? So I think I don't want it to get lost, though, that VIA has done a lot of planning, and I think it's fair to say that we are the transportation experts in this area. And while it's a city-led process, I really think that that we should be embraced as much as possible for the sake of the community that has entrusted us to look out for this issue. We have invested a lot of time and money into the planning from our perspective, so that's a community resource that I don't want to have
Sure, and it won't be lost.
squandered.
I know you've done also in the past, but also recently, you've been doing a lot of planning.
Right.
And we'll certainly take that all into account and fold that into the data we have.
I would imagine that in the city's planning for all of the growth and so forth, that public transportation is a vital, element going forward to meet the growing demands on our, stretched resources. Is that correct?
Indeed. I mean, when we look at the growth here, what options do we have? We can widen all the freeways by 6 lanes on each side, or all the major arterials by 2 or 3 lanes, and is that viable?
Right.
Like double deck the freeways, or provide transit options?
One of the things that I sort of want to put into your stew of planning is to deal with the reality that the public transportation entity for our region, as compared with the other cities that have already done their planning and have maybe been ahead of the game as far as we're concerned, we are one of the poorest, frankly, relative to those other cities that have and regions that have public transportation because of the taxing structure. We were working for the longest time on half-cent sales tax, and then we went up to another portion of a quarter sales tax, and now all the sales tax has been allocated. But I think if we're being realistic about what it is we're going to do for our region, for our community, that's a funding challenge that we're already in the negative compared to our sister cities and regions in Texas. And when people come and decide where they want to live and have a nice quality of life, I think that's going to impact us. So I don't think that shows up on a map or, on an action plan, perhaps. But I want to encourage the planning that is going on with you and the city, that's incorporated somehow, because I do think we're already at a disadvantage. It's as if we're in a boxing match with one arm tied behind our
Well, that's
back.
why the phase 3 of our initial study, our baseline study, was a fiscal impact analysis of how much will it cost to do the best practice growth we're talking about.
Right.
And we may not be able to afford all of it, so we have to know that going into this.
Well, we would be open to anything that would allow us to get more funding to provide comparable services compared to our sister entities throughout the state. It is too frustrating, frankly, to see that one of the chief challenges we have is just a structure of funding that somebody 35 years ago or whenever decided that that made sense for this community, and I worried that was short-sighted then, because we're sort of paying the price now. So to you and all the folks that go into this thinking process, I would ask that you include this as an issue to tackle.
Okay, very good point. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. I think we look forward to working with you all, continue working with the staff.
Sure.
And I think it may be worthwhile, maybe at some point, we have money in our budget to update our 2035 plan, so we want to do that in a collaborative way with you all.
Exactly.
As well.
Right.
And so we get 2 bangs for the buck when we get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay, that brings us into our next item, and what I'd like to do now is skip down to our budget adoption. And that'd be item number 9, and with that, looks like Keith is making the presentation.
Give Steve a break.
Give us a break. It's so bad.
Good evening, everyone. It's our pleasure to present a proposed fiscal year 2015 operating budget and 2015 to 2019 capital plan that significantly improves services for our existing customers and begins to put in place the pieces of a transit system necessary to address some of the growth that Mr. Dugan just talked about. As you know, we've had 2 workshops. We've had a public meeting, we've had individual board briefings with, I believe, almost all the board members. So tonight I was going to dispense with all of the numbers and tables and things that you've been looking at deeply over the last month and focus on the budget outcomes. So First, in reference to the operating budget, the most significant issue is that we're adding more service. We're adding 3.8% more service. We will be at the highest levels of service that VIA has ever provided. We will, for the first time, exceed 1.7 million annual revenue hours of service, and so I think that's a significant achievement, and that's supported and is the most significant cost increase within this operating budget. We're adding mechanics, we're adding supervisors to our maintenance area, we're adding technical expertise and training to improve our reliability and to bolster what is already a nationally known and perhaps the best maintenance program in the country. We're also adding police officers to our force so that we can continue to reduce the overall response time of our security force. As you know, there's no planned fare increase for fiscal year 15, so we can maintain some of the lowest fares in the country, particularly the monthly pass, which is $35, and our semester pass, which provides students with service for 3 months also for $35. The operating budget also supports greater customer convenience. Two of the most significant activities for next year will be in the fare payment area. We're going to, we are moving forward with a smart card system or tap system, and also a mobile phone payment system, which we think will significantly improve the convenience and the speed with which customers can both purchase and use their fare media. We're also adding dollars to the budget to improve our overall training and support for our employees. We're going to improve and expand our employee recognition programs so that we can identify and really highlight outstanding performance by our employees. And so that's another significant initiative supported by the operating budget. And finally, we're also and always trying to find ways to save on our expenses. We're going to continue our fuel hedging program, which has saved over $7 million over the last 3 years. We're going to move quickly and aggressively into the compressed natural gas area, where fuel prices are 60 to 70% on a per mile basis less than what we're paying today. That can save upwards of $5 to $6 million annually within 5 years. We're also going to be doing a business process review initiative next year to look at our procedures and the level of automation of some of our administrative areas where we think there's a lot of room for improvement. If it pleases the board, I'll move right into the 2015-2019 capital program. I know there are two separate issues on the agenda, but I thought I'd just smooth right into the next. As you know, the 2019 capital program includes a significant amount, over a third of the overall program, for new buses. So we'll be adding 323 new buses during the 5-year period. That will replace about 60% of our existing fleet, and in addition provide 40 to 50 additional buses for service expansion, because we're increasing service, so we need more buses. Of course, we have begun construction and will open sometime this summer or early fall, the West Side Multimodal Transit Center. We will also be upgrading our existing transit centers. You'll be hearing next month more about the Ingram Transit Center and the upgrade that we're designing there. We're going to be incorporating more sustainability elements, more elements of wellness and healthy living, and so this is sort of a departure with what we've done in the past, and we think will be a good model for upgrading our transit centers moving into the future. The capital program also includes new park and rides out 151, further out on I-10. As you know, we have a park and ride at I-10 and 1604. the Stone Oak Park and Ride at 281, and a Northeast Park and Ride up at I-35. Another large component of the capital program is the bus shelter program. So we have over $12 million, and with the TxDOT money, we're adding another $9 million to add anywhere from 900 to 1,000 new bus shelters over the next 2 to 3 years, and we know that that will increase the percentage of our passengers who will have more comfortable conditions out in the environment. Another large program within the 5-year capital program is a new bus rapid transit system corridor in the southwest part of the city. We're looking at Zarzamora and General McMullen in addition to Southwest Military, and those are some of the highest growth and highest ridership corridors that we have within our system. In addition to that, we're, as Mr. Dugan just mentioned and as board members just mentioned, we're going to be continuing our planning efforts, looking at high capacity options throughout the region, looking where high capacity rail transit can provide the types of services that will meet the needs of future generations, and so there's ample dollars provided in the budget to support those efforts. The total 5-year capital program comes in at $578.6 million in fiscal year 15. We have $127.9 million. The consolidated fiscal year 2015 budget, you see I've separated out the MTA and ATD operating budget. The total MTA and ATD via budget comes in at $203 million. Capital budget, I just said, is $127.9 for a total budget next year of $330.9 million. And what we're requesting the board tonight to do is first approve the fiscal year 15 via MTA operating budget. You're going to approve the ATD budget as part of the ATD agenda. And also to approve the 5-year capital plan and the corresponding submission of projects in the Transportation Improvement Program that goes to the MPO that they also review and approve. And with that, I'll take any questions or comments.
Thank you for that presentation, Keith. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Do we have a motion and a second to approve? Any questions? Comments? I know our new trustees got an inundation on this yesterday, and we've had the chance to have a work session on it a couple weeks ago. Dave, you had a question?
Yeah, the motion and the second was to approve the 2015 budget.
Correct. Correct.
We're going to work on the 15 and 19 capital plan. Will be
That'll be a next
one.
I think the item is together, right?
They're two separate.
Two separate items?
Separate.
Okay. So the first.
So we have to have two separate votes.
Correct. So we're just voting on the 15 budget.
Correct. We have two separate items.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So the first one is on the budget, annual budget, operating budget. Okay, any additional questions?
Just one quick comment, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to thank Jeff and his staff for spending the extra time with me and, helping me see my shortcomings and recognizing the budget and understanding it. So I appreciate it. It was a good education process for me. And so thank you all for working with me on that stuff and helping me understand it.
Good. Well, let me just say, I think our budget reflects our continuing commitment to improve our basic bus service. I know we went through some challenging times here the last several months, but the fact of the matter is, VIA does a great job. We provide 44 million passenger trips a year. I think that was last year's number, and we're going to see that continue to increase. And we do that despite the fact that we want to get a 0.5% sales tax, from the MTA, as opposed to other cities that get a 1% sales tax. And so I think it's a envious record, does a great job. This budget improves bus service by 3.8%, is my understanding. And that includes improving service in all sectors of the community. And beyond that, it includes upgrading our existing transit center, developing new transit facilities. I think some are already mentioned, Brook City Base, the Stone Oak Parkway, 151 and 1604, I-10, 1604, and obviously our transit centers at the Robert Thompson and the West Side Multimodal Center downtown. And so those are projects that are there. And beyond that, continues to work on upgrading and moving up new projects in our 2035 plan and speeding those up. And we talked about those as well. For example, the bus rapid transit line, building on the success we've had with the Primo bus rapid transit line on Fredericksburg Road, doing that now in the Southwest Corridor, Military Drive from Brook City Base to Satsamora, up Satsamora through by Port San Antonio up to by the west side, Joe McMullen to Bandera to Callahan to the Medical Center. And that line is the second highest volume, I believe, in terms of passenger. 1.8 million passenger trips a year just on Satsamora. And so it can provide that better service for that very busy line as well. So all those are improvements that are being done. The bus shelters, something I know I've talked about with Jeff for a number of times. I've gotten into the habit of driving around town and counting bus shelters, and I think Jeff hates me for that. But but we're adding another 900 to 1,000 bus shelters over the next couple of years, and again trying to make things more comfortable for our passengers and riding more attractive. Meanwhile, upgrading technology, smart cards, mobile ticketing, ticket vending machines, better access, and all by keeping our fares at the same low level. There was a scheduled fare increase, if I'm not mistaken, to take effect this year. That's being deferred for a year. And so I think that that's an important part of what we're looking at. Continue to invest in planning. Yes, we have money in the budget to update our 2035 comprehensive plan. And yes, we're going to collaborate with the city and work on their comprehensive planning efforts because we know that it needs to be done collaboratively. You got to connect jobs and land use and housing to transportation, and all that is an important part of that. So it's a key partnership we need to work on. But I also like to just also point out that we're taking care of our employees. We have a lot of dedicated employees. Sometimes here at Citizens Be Heard, we hear the complaints, you know, and we're going to have those. It's not going to be 44 million passenger trips a year. It's not going to be perfect. But we have a lot more people that don't complain and that have success in their work. I will just tell you one quick story. At St. Mary's University, I teach a graduate course in public administration, and one of the assignments I've given my students is to ride in teams of 2 on a bus route and report back and do a report on the urban condition that they see. Well, last week, a team of students rode the Satsamora line that goes, is it 502, 520? 520. Goes from A&M campus on the south side up Satsamora, Fredericksburg Road over to the medical center. And one of them told me he was really impressed with the bus driver because they stopped at the Veterans VA hospital over at the medical center, and there was this gentleman in a wheelchair having a hard time getting up over the curb. The bus driver stopped the bus, got out of the bus, went over and helped the gentleman get onto the curb. And so I need to share that with you all because again, we hear all the complaints, but we have workers, employees that do a good job and they should be rewarded properly, and that's included in this budget as well. So I'm very proud of the work that's been done, and I heartily recommend and endorse the approval of this motion. So without that, if there are no further comments or questions, I apologize for taking so much time. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Then the next item would be the capital budget, and we have a motion on that item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve, and that would be the 5-year plan, capital plan, that includes the $127 million for FY15. Any additional comments or questions on that?
And it does include 1,000 shelters, just so you...
Yeah, okay.
I have a question, and for the question, can you move back to slide number 18, which is just one slide before this? No. Get more. No, never mind. I thought it was 18, but that's okay. I wrote that one off, wrong one. Go another one. The other way. Come back this way.
Come forward.
Come
now.
forward.
Come forward.
Next.
Is it, you say 20?
Yeah, I guess so. I thought it was one other than the one. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, stop. That is not all-inclusive, correct?
Those are just the ones that I talked about during the presentation. I mean, there's,
Oh, as far as what's in the capital budget?
Yes, because, yeah, it was 17, it wasn't 18. Only because that would be a 4-year pause button, and from what's not on that,
In fact, that pretty much highlights the immediate work that we're doing
Correct.
right now,
'cause
correct?
that looks like 15, that doesn't look like 16, 17, 18, or 19.
Yes, yes.
Just want to make sure of that.
Yes, that, you're absolutely correct.
Got it.
Thank you. Any additional questions, comments? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much, Keith.
Just take a second, and I'd like to thank Keith and Brian and Steve, who never accepts a thank, and Richard. I'd like to thank you for all the work you did on the budget. You did a fantastic job, and I want to thank the board members for all the time you devoted to workshops and then the individual one-on-one time, and excellent questions throughout. I think the budget is a better product for everyone's work, and I think it's a great transit offering to this community, so thank you.
Thank you. And you're right, we can count on the numbers being there because Steve's on it. And so we know that these numbers are there. Okay, good. Thank you very much. That brings us in. We're going to skip back now to the state legislative agenda item, which is item number 7 on the agenda. And with that, Charlie will be making that presentation.
Then I come down. Where's the slide issue? All right. Good evening. Last week on the 17th, the IGR Public Affairs Committee met, and we were able to go over this in greater detail because we had the assistance of our 4 lobbyists in Austin, and that was Mark Vane, Walter Serna, Luis Saenz, and Mark Rodriguez were here present and were able to elaborate, and each made a presentation. After the discussion, there was an adoption or to suggest and to present to the full board for consideration what would be our legislative agenda in the forthcoming legislative session in Austin, which starts in January. This is where we are. There is going to be a blue sheet with the capital appearing on it that's going to basically give you what we have. It was presented to the board IGR, as I've indicated to you last week, and where we are as far as it's still a project in work that we're working through because we have reached out to the other MTAs for the status and issues to be pursued because, of course, if we have any commonality that we can go as the different MTAs from Dallas and Fort Worth and Houston and Austin and El Paso, it will assist us. But we're not getting anything back at this time. DART, they said it was preliminary, check back at the end of September. Houston does not have an agenda. Corpus Christi was forthcoming in the next few days. They did indicate that they might be with us on a bill impacting the sale of CNG fuel. El Paso directed us to their city, and of course Austin said that the only thing they could share at the present time was maybe joining us on the bus shoulder issue, which has passed in past legislative sessions but has been vetoed by the governor, and Fort Worth does not have agenda at the present time. As I said last week, and I know that many of you are already aware of this, we meet at a roundtable with the governmental affairs individuals from the City of San Antonio, from the county, River Authority, SAWS, and CPS Energy to see where we can all come together. Right now, we're trying to coordinate what we're doing regarding a couple of defensive issues that we feel that the city and the county may have a great stake and would join us, and we can go over that when I go to the other slide. We will continue our collaboration with the individual entities that I just mentioned, and we're hoping that we will finalize the agenda. It will be adopted. We are being requested by other entities as to what we have in place at the present time. We even had an inquiry from the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce yesterday. Tomorrow we will host a luncheon for our legislative caucus, our state senators and state representatives. We are going to have about 15 of the offices obviously represented. 3 of the state representatives should be present, and then we will have members of staff there. We will begin to develop a list of potential bill sponsors, and then obviously identifying those that will be our champions. What I'm going to do is, if I can get out of this and go to the agenda, which you should have a copy before you. And there it is. We can go over each of these items. We can elaborate on them. We do not have the assistance of our lobbyists here, but if we can answer something, we definitely will get right back to you. The first point you can see there is to amend the state fuel tax language to provide a gas tax exemption for an MTA. It gets a little complex. Some entities are exempt, some are not. Chairman has directed us to find those that are similarly situated as we are. That could result in a savings of approximately $1.2 million to us. In other words, we pay the state tax, fuel tax, on our diesel and our gasoline. The second point, support legislative or administrative changes that could provide funding for VIA's green energy programs and fleet conversion. We are converting a great portion of our fleet over to natural gas. The question is, does an MTA such as VIA qualify for all of the different grant opportunities out there? And the answer that we've been told by our lobbyists is that we don't to the greatest extent possible, and that's what we're going to try to remedy. The next thing is really important, and Bonnie is here and she can elaborate when we get to any questions regarding this, and that's to pursue legislation, if necessary, that will maintain the ordinary care standard currently applicable to an MTA such as VIA. In the past, it has been an ordinary care standard that has been applied to our actions. There is a case out of Dallas where the judge found that we should be held to the standard of a common carrier, which is much higher. That increases the risk quotient for us, and obviously when you go to court on those things, and when you settle, it could result in greater risk and expenditure for VIA. That case is now, I think, in the appellate courts, and we'll see where we are as the legislative session proceeds. I would imagine that we will have other MTAs joining us on that. Advanced legislative language on the use of highway bus shoulders for public transit. Some of you may be familiar with that. In the past, we've had success, except that it was vetoed by the governor. Obviously, there will be a new governor next year, and you'll have other MTAs that may join us on this. My understanding from speaking with our lobbyists that they may have a little modification on the use of the shoulders and such in that piece of legislation. Next, aggressively pursue legislative opportunities that benefit our safety and security program here. That could be through additional resources and training, making sure that we're taking advantage of what might not be a traditional source of funding or savings for us as it relates to safety and security. The last two are basically what we would just call catch-all buckets, and that is advanced legislative efforts that positively impact VIA projects and programs. And those things will develop in the course of the legislative session. The last one, in very general terms, we can expect a couple of things, but we have something that is all-inclusive because we're not real sure what else may be out there that would negatively impact VIA projects and programs. We do know that we do have a state representative that has gone on record that he would be looking to change the way in which our board is appointed to one from an appointed system to an elected system. We also, same representative has indicated that he might think of a state statute that would impose a public vote to be held prior to any rail project here in San Antonio, irrespective of the fact that the city will have a charter change up for the vote on May the 5th. Should that pass, the question then comes, and again, Bonnie can elaborate on this because it really presents a quandary. Will you have to have 2 elections in order to ever have a rail project in San Antonio? All that needs to be fully developed. I don't have anything else to add right now, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and I think that many of them may have been posed last week. As I said, if I don't have them, we'll get right back to you. But that's what it looks like presently.
Thank you, Charlie, for that presentation. I understand we have our legislative luncheon scheduled for tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
And no, several of the trustees have already agreed they're going to be able to be there or plan to be there tomorrow. So that's good. And we have a chance to share this legislative agenda with them. With that, do we need to take action if we have to approve the agenda, or?
My understanding is that this is an action item.
So before we move to discussion, the chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. And for discussion, I believe
Yes,
Doug
please.
had some questions.
Charlie, thanks for your presentation. As I understood from the committee meeting, this can be supplemented as more issues come to our attention, and so this doesn't have to be, it's not fixed in cement, at least in restricting our ability to do more than what we have listed today, correct?
That's correct, Doug. And as you know, you have brought something to our attention that we're still trying to figure out what the impact would be, and that is the use of federal funding for qualifying for loans. And there is something there, and as a matter of fact, we got some information on this yesterday. We were just trying to figure out clearly what the issue would be, then going forward, and it is, in my opinion, if it's something that would be in our toolbox, we ought to have it there. Whether we use it or not would be another question, but I think that's where we'll finally end up, and is that something that maybe should be available just in case for future use.
Yeah, I was told that we're the only state that doesn't have this ability to access loans or using federal funds to support loans in some manner, and that all 49 other states have this authority. And what stands in the way is that we don't have a state law that permits that. So it seems natural to ask the question, why don't we have that, and does that make sense for us? I don't know that it does, but it sounds like it makes sense for 49 other states. I would wonder.
No, it's well worth exploring, sure.
I'm sorry, there was another question that I had that's left my brain right now. Give me a minute.
Any other comments or questions while Doug's thinking?
That's it, it's gone. It took a bus and left.
It took a bus.
Well, I'm glad to see that we're not just playing defense. I think that it's important. Oh, it was the issue that you just mentioned. Yes, now I'm glad it's come back. Whether it got a transfer. The issue of whether this board should be an elected board, to me, that's I don't think we, and I'm speaking for all of us, not having talked to any of us about this, but I would think philosophically that's an issue that our appointing authorities ought to tackle. I mean, we're here at their pleasure. We were serving because they asked us to serve. If the county and the city and the suburban cities were to decide or think that it's a good idea to have an elected VIA board, then it would seem to me that it would be in their interest to take that issue on. I think if we were to take that on, frankly, it would look self-serving, like we're trying to maintain our hold on this board, and I don't think any of us have that inclination. We all want to serve, but certainly if our appointing authorities think that it ought to be done in a different way, that would be something. So I don't know that we should be tackling that issue. This is something that was presented last legislative session.
No, we wouldn't be the lead, Doug, on anything like that. It has come up in the past, and I know that we, in the past, have made statements to the effect that the present manner does result in really gaining great talent, expertise across the board. You have an elected body actually making those appointments. And you're right, I think the authority and such that is really impacted is that with the appointed entities. And the question then comes down to, and it's probably bigger than just the VIA board, and I know we have a long agenda, but the real question then is that how does it set a precedent and such? But that really is an issue for the county and for the city. And of course, if they ask us any questions about how it's performed in the past, then I think we would be forthcoming based on our experience all these years.
And then that last issue that you raised, that Bonnie, we won't ask Bonnie to answer it now, but the issue of how this community will decide rail projects of whatever kind going forward, I think there is obviously an interest in having it be submitted to the board, I mean to the electorate, to the citizens. I worry though that some of these issues that you alluded to may not be resolved in the planning, and so I encourage you and the lobbyists to sort of help us walk through that, because perhaps this should be done at the state level. I don't know that it should, but there needs to be some kind of discussion, it seems to me, between the various folks who are wanting to see an election to work out how that would make sense for us. It would not make sense, it seems to me, to have 2 elections. It would not make sense to have an election that only speaks for one part of the community that we serve, maybe. You know, those are legitimate questions, I think. So I would like for you and our team of lobbyists and Bonnie and whoever to maybe come back and kind of walk through that with us now while we're trying to develop this legislative agenda as we go forward for the next session. So at the next meeting, I'd like to know more about what it is that we're really tackling.
And we'll have a side-by-side to show you what Austin has, because now we're talking about MTAs that do have conditions imposed regarding elections before rail. And what we would do is we would have, you know, Austin, Houston, and then what San Antonio is proposing, and why is it any different? Why does it present a greater challenge to us in what we would have imposed on VIA? So you're absolutely right, and we're not there yet, but I know that Bonnie is working on identifying what she really believes could result in just an undue burden, an unnecessary burden, but still meeting and listening to the people that believe that there should be an election. It's not about ignoring those voices at all.
I think that's a very good point, that, you know, if we compare ourselves to these other entities that can make these projects happen, and they can make them happen more fluidly, then maybe we will be able to, if we make it too cumbersome a process. Again, I think we put ourselves as a community in a competitive disadvantage, and people who want to come and locate here and live here will ask that question: why is it so hard to get these kinds of projects off the ground? And I hope that we're, you know, having some foresight in our thinking and our planning as we go forward.
Thank you, Doug. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to approve the legislative agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. That brings us next to our next item, the VIA Transit Advisory Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This evening, I'm joined by Stephanie Suarez, who also works in government relations for us, and who will be taking, we hope, with your approval this evening, a big lead in this particular committee before you tonight. I'd like to just brief the board as to where we are. We did have this discussion with the IGRPA committee, but wanted to bring it forward to you. We have reached out, as per the directive from the board, to all of the members of the previous VIA Transit Modern Streetcar Advisory Committee, and basically we are now recommending a new structure that will kind of assume many of that membership into this new structure. We did poll the previous committee, known as MISAC to us, the Modern Streetcar Advisory Committee. We had great membership in that committee. I'm glad to report to you, both Stephanie and I have heard great enthusiasm about continuing to serve on this new structure if you so approve it this evening. I'm sorry, I'm moving backwards for you. We did talk to all of these member organizations. We still know that from the city of San Antonio, there are a couple of individuals who are serving in very specific capacities, and so they are continuing to talk to us, but at this time have not opted to continue. The rest of the membership has continued, and as your notes will indicate, the only person not reflected on this matrix for you is the student person, the individual we were going to have representing student organizations, who was really going to join the committee during the fall. We have gone ahead and listed for you some staff recommendations. Stephanie led a brainstorming session within the organization as we looked at some of the things you had directed us to do. We have recommended that the community liaisons that you had named to the IGRPA committee, representing labor and joint partnership development and areas of our community, remain on this committee. So they will be joining, and I think all of them have been gracious enough to indicate that they would do so. We do have advisory organizations that always would come to us when, as needed, in an advisory capacity, and we're recommending those. And I apologize, a change that didn't make that listing is the RMA. We would ask SAWS to continue to work with us. CPS Energy, the City of San Antonio has been very involved with us, SAMCO, Bexar County, and TxDOT, and now the RMA. We did remove any amount of individuals in terms of composition. We had originally recommended to you a number of 25. We've left it open as you deem appropriate, and based on your direction this evening, we will outreach to those individuals to make them a part of the committee. There were a lot of representatives that have been recommended. I'm not going to read those, but obviously faith-based community, the military, and so on, that are right now on the committee structure, not represented. So the purpose of the committee, and this will be reflected in the charter that is also attached to this board item, is to be advisory to this board, very strongly an advisory, multifaceted role. To gain knowledge, we hope that we can share with them via programs, achievements, so that they understand and we hope can share that information with their sphere of influence. They would be our transit ambassadors to share information with that constituency. Hopefully help us in the alignment of efforts with the City of San Antonio's comprehensive planning. We just heard from Mr. Dugan this evening. Service community resources to VIA as we update our own long-range transportation comprehensive plan, and certainly identify opportunities for us to partner and leverage our resources for shared vision projects with respective organizations. We will have board coordination, board liaison support. At this time, Deborah does all those postings. We would ensure that we would be open and transparent to the public. We do have a internal staff working group. It's a cross-departmental team that would work to support the advisory committee as we do these planning efforts and as we move forward. The timeline was to present to the IGR PA committee the committee concept, and we got feedback from you on the 17th of September. Tonight we're here for your action on the actual creation of the committee and the approval of the charter. And then we will move forward to recruit and finalize the committee member organizations and representatives as we have done in the past, and bring those back for your approval. So hopefully in November, plan for a kickoff meeting for this committee. That's the recommendation that's before you. I certainly can put the charter up, which just reflects what I have just spoken of, and we can do that so that if there are any questions, we can certainly answer them, and Stephanie and I are prepared to do that.
Thank you, Diani, for that presentation. Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second to approve. Are there any comments or questions?
I have a couple comments.
Go ahead, Tex.
I think something like this does require quite a bit of planning. I think, considering that that Lester and myself are quite new to this, I think we could offer some valuable information and insight that hasn't been weighed into this plan. So I'd actually like to motion to table this for at least a month so that we can work with these women and make sure that this goes in the right direction for the future.
I think we have a motion to table. Is there a second? I'm sorry?
Second to table.
Is there a second?
There was a motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve, but he just made a motion to table. And we have to, there's a motion to his Is there a second to his motion? Yeah. There's a second? Okay. A motion to table is non-debatable, if I understand correctly, from our lawyers.
It takes precedence. So you
And
vote on that
so,
one first.
say that again?
It takes precedence, so you vote on that one first.
Right. And so we have to vote on the motion to table, and it's not debatable. You can't discuss it.
That's correct.
So we have a motion and a second to table for 1 month.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Nay. I think motion fails. I only counted a couple of aye votes. I think what we need to clarify here is on your timetable, and Tex, I think some of your concerns are valid, and that is, who's going to be participating in this in different roles. And I think what we're talking about here is some of those questions I was going to have myself in a moment on a discussion of this motion. And you have here a number of entities that are there, but that's not going to be finalized until next month. And so we'll be coming back to do that next month anyway.
Okay.
So we can have time to spend with
Absolutely.
What we're doing here is approving the concept and the general structure.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then we'll actually be naming names next month.
That's correct. This is just a general structure, and
Okay,
then
so
we
you're
very much
approving the
welcome
framework, not the actual
board members' input
people
on
and
this.
And as an
organizations
example,
involved.
one of the
Okay.
questions I had was, I know we had here as technical resources, the city of San Antonio, but as you all know, we're so interrelated with the city of San Antonio in so many different ways, that is that going to be the mayor and city council? Is that going to be the city manager's office? Is that going to be the capital improvements and, transportation and capital improvements department? Is that going to be the intergovernmental affairs folks? Or is it multiple? And so a lot of this, I think, needs to be ferreted out, flushed out, and we can get some more detail on that. And that would help me as well, and I think would help Tex as well to understand a little bit better.
Absolutely.
I think the basic structure here is fairly straightforward, and maybe it would help if you kind of went through that a little bit, particularly for our new trustees.
And Chairman, if I may, so under the City of San Antonio where it says further discussion, that's exactly what we want to do. Because initially, those city departments were identified within the City of San Antonio specific for streetcar. So as we move forward, and so it doesn't say no by the City of San Antonio, those departments, but it's for further discussion so we get your guidance and what are the recommendations. So absolutely, this committee is an extension of you all, and we serve as a mediator, as a facilitator of widening the net of input for our community to you. So absolutely, we as staff are here to facilitate that vision, and we're excited to hear the ideas that you may have. So today's intention is for a framework.
But these were the details of the membership on the Streetcar
This was-
Advisory Committee.
This represents, I'm sorry, go ahead. This represents the individuals by organization. So initially, on the Modern Streetcar Advisory Committee, the board had designated organizations.
Right.
And then within each organization,
They
an
nominated
individual
somebody.
was identified. And so our last Modern Streetcar Advisory Committee, we had the discussion with this group about broadening the scope. And so at that meeting, which was held in August, we asked these individuals, are you interested in continuing to participate? So this is what this represents, is their interest. Now, I want to highlight the people that said no, it wasn't because they were done with VIA. Lynn Wheeler, who was our downtown resident, she has some other commitments, master planning that she's doing in her neighborhood, but she still wants to provide input as she is able to. Andres Andujad, big supporter of VIA, but he is currently undergoing a huge hemisphere bond project. And then Sharice Bell just kind of felt King William, the scope was wider. So, and then the Fiesta Commission initially said yes, but I've not received a follow-up written verbal, so that's why it still says no response.
So you said there was going to be a total of 25 members on the committee?
That was expanded by the recommendation from the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee was that we not set a number, but allow the group to have the membership that would be representative of VIA's service area. So that would include other folks that are not on this list, like the
Because we have
sectors.
15 on this list. I think that's what I counted. So, okay. So that's something that we can work out before next
Absolutely.
month?
It
Okay.
could be 30, could be a larger board member.
And that was one of the reasons there were discussions at the committee to keep it
Okay.
more fluid, so to
Okay.
remove that 25 barrier. So, Tex, like your comment, we may, as we move through this, find there's areas we've missed that need to be included or issues that need to be included. And this is it came out of the Intergovernmental Relations and Public Affairs Committee. That's a committee of the entire board.
Mm-hmm.
And so this advisory committee will also envision to have full board involvement.
Okay, all right.
I do think, Mr. Chair, that it is one of the pause button side benefits, I suppose, with regard to the streetcar discussion, that, this was aimed at focusing on streetcar, but it seems that this is an opportunity for us to expand the discussion to the entire region about rail options or other mass transportation options. And so it seems to me, be natural and sensible to have a broader representation from all sectors of our region. So, with no offense to these folks, good people who said yes to the initial idea, it seems to me that we have permission, frankly, by circumstances, to say, well, why don't we rethink this and see what makes sense for the larger debates and issues we'll be tackling. So I'm open to structuring this in such a way that we can do that.
Yeah, so you all are not recommending that these 15 people be named to this new Transit Advisory Committee, who had accepted to be in the Streetcar Advisory Committee, or are y'all recommending that? We're not doing names today, are we?
Okay, so initially, what occurred at our meeting was what happened was the direction to pause, but we had still scheduled our Modern Streetcar Advisory Committee meeting, so the sequence of the dates. And so what I understood our intention to go to the Modern Streetcar Advisory Committee meeting was to mention that we were going to broaden our scope and if there would still be interest. So as of right now, this just represents the people who are willing to serve.
A broader scope.
In the broader scope.
Okay.
In a broader scope. And so when we started to go down the list, and again, initially at the committee, I think everyone under pressure was like, oh, yes, I'll do it. But I went ahead and followed up individually. So they had time to really, think about whether they wanted to really commit to a broader scope. And some people, did decline based on that commitment of not wanting to have a broader scope.
Is that what we see here now?
That's what you see here. But again, this is a framework, and I think it behooves us to take time to make sure that we're looking at the entire segment of the community that we are hoping, to represent and get input on. So this is just based on a task that was given to us to see what was the level of the commitment of these folks who were serving on the Modern Streetcar Advisory Committee. So to answer your question about whether we are recommending them, I would say the larger sector organizations, not necessarily individuals, should.
That's what I was thinking, and that's what's in your memo.
The memo, yeah.
And that includes the American Institute of Architects, Imagine San Antonio, Congress for New Urbanism, and includes some of these organizations as well. And so we would go back to these organizations, plus the additional ones, and ask for a representative.
Yes, sir.
And so we really don't even, this slide just confuses everybody. And
Sorry
so-
about that. We didn't mean to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, as an example, we're not talking about UTSA downtown only now. UTSA has a broader perspective.
Correct.
But so would Texas A&M on the south side.
Right.
And so would other entities. The city also operates the airport. And I think if we're talking about mass transit, you got to connect the airport, and so all those things are things that need to be brought to the table. And so maybe it'd be helpful, instead of naming names other than our community liaisons, that we go over the entities that you're recommending. No, not.
Not that, no.
Go back to the other one. There you go.
Oh, wait. Go to the one that has our community members' name.
Right.
Stop.
No.
Go to
There
that
you
one.
go, right there. Oh.
Stop back there.
There.
Yeah.
Now, I just bear in mind that list of entities assumes, does it not, that, for example,
The
the
15 are in
Hispanic
there.
Chamber,
Yeah.
which is on the other slide, is already in. And so that list of entities are only those that are not already represented
So
in the
it'd
other.
be in addition to the other 15?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's important.
Can you go over those for us?
Okay. In the brainstorming session, what was recommended were for us to look at someone from the American Institute of Architects, Imagine San Antonio, Congress for New Urbanism, Urban Land Institute, because obviously, land use issues are coming up and, the whole issue of that. The Real Estate Council of San Antonio, new growth areas. You just heard about activity centers. You heard about all of the population. Someone from San Antonio 2020, based on targets for the community at large. The accessibility community, someone who is a Via Trans patron should, or perhaps a caregiver could be considered. Certainly the technology sector, someone from the faith-based community, and I believe that was the recommendation actually from one of the community liaisons, and then representative from Joint Base San Antonio, because we are a military-based city, and so that perhaps we should consider all of those things. Plus, we have an interest, as you know, with Fort Sam. So the internal dialogue was about sectors that were missing, but we did put that basically recommendations from the board would be very telling in the final listing of member organizations.
I have to admit, I'm a little confused myself. This list here is different from what we have in our memo. Yeah, the memo has representatives from all sectors of the VIA service area, various chambers of commerce, individual private citizens, suburban cities.
Yeah.
Yeah, apologize. I'm not quite
And
sure.
so, that's why it's a little confusing.
I'd also like to see some engagement from
Not seeing that.
like green energy companies. I know we have Mission Solar just set up a plant. Engagement with companies like that and alternative kind of fuel sources, I think would provide a lot of value to this framework. I think we can discuss further people like that, but that was just top of my head, something that I think it would be essential to this committee.
I see.
It's my understanding that the limit of the membership was lifted from the 25 just for that reason, to get solicit other input from us. And that's why I said to go ahead now, is this is just the framework, and though that information, those type of organizations, and there will be many, many others, could then be added, and this could be expanded at that time.
For example, the technological center, the green industry would be one, computers, cybersecurity, all of those other kinds of things could be lumped into that. Entrepreneurship, schools and school collaboration and partnerships. I would like to see more of that kind of bigger thinking than just representing one individual cause or one individual area. It'll be a little bit more generic, so that they're looking at all of Bexar County and not just one little piece of San Antonio neighborhood too. It's got to be a balance.
And if it was all inclusive, then if for some if in the future VIA was to roll out some other program, we would have grassroots from all over the community that could disseminate information, and that would be part of this team.
So the framework is approved, we just need to
Work on
the details. I think what we could approve today would be the concept of creating the Transit Advisory Committee, and ask the staff to come back with a better review of the alternative organizations that we can then consider, including a re-review of the Streetcar Advisory Committee. Is that
correct? Yes. In fact, what we could do is simply provide you a list of organizations.
And that was the
Regardless of whether
direction
they
we were
were or
hoping
were
for
not.
this evening, both Stephanie and myself, so that we can come back with that final listing of everyone that should be considered, or that you feel, particularly because we have new members on the board, should be part of that group.
And how would we submit additional organizations to be included?
Well, I was going to make a recommendation. If today we're talking conceptual, that we'd like to move forward with the committee, what we could do is work on a memo that we would distribute through Mr. Arndt and Deborah about organizations, the intent of how we can get a wide representation of our service area. And we could work with Deborah and Mr. Arndt's office on suggestions. We are certainly available for any kind of discussion or recommendations you might have. And so if we could provide you with a memo and we have some dialogue, I mean, this is a collaborative effort, us, again, facilitating your ideas and intent for community input.
Well, we have an
That's a short
IGR
answer.
meeting.
Yeah, we could have another
Couple of
IGR, Public Affairs Committee meeting and go over it again, and we can do that in the coming weeks. In the meanwhile, it gives you all time to solicit feedback individually, fine-tune some of this. For example, I have no idea what the Congress for New Urbanism is, and I'm used to the old urbanism. It's new urbanism, okay.
Newer than that.
Oh, please. We would welcome that.
Okay.
I look forward to that, yes.
So do we need to amend the motion?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Do we need to amend the motion, or do we just need to give direction?
Direction.
Why don't we just give that as direction, and then bring back ultimately for a formal approval?
That's good.
Is that collectively okay with the trustees? I see several heads nodding. I see more than 6 heads nodding, so that's good for me. Okay, you have your direction. Thanks. We'll see you next month, and also at the IGR Public Affairs Committee. Okay, that brings us to our next item on the agenda, which is the item number 12, the Healthcare Administrative Services Contract. And I believe Marcus and his bow tie is here to make the presentation. And his sidekick, Orlando. You need to work on your tie, Orlando. It's just, you need to work on your tie, dude.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board, Mr. Bryant and also Mr. Morgan. Welcome to the VIA team. Tonight we're going to go over our healthcare administration services. I have with me Orlando Gallego, who is our Manager of Employee Services and Benefits. I have Kathy DeYoung, who is our Benefits Specialist. And also joining me on my far right is Michael Rodriguez. He's with Towers Watson, who's our Health and Benefit Consultant.
Thank you, Marcus. Today we're going to talk about the Healthcare Administration RFP. The RFP was for medical and pharmacy benefits only. It did not include dental and vision, which we're in our 3rd year of that contract. Some of the objectives of the RFP were to improve the employee health and reduce risk. We were looking at improving our employee services with new technologies, also to contain or reduce costs. I'll go into that discussion a little further about our current state, and also for our employees and retirees. We want to improve our education and communications to establish a greater understanding of healthcare costs. Basically, we're looking at additional self-service options. There's also things included in the RFP were treatment cost estimator tools to help employees understand what the treatment's going to cost in the end. There's enhancements to the customer service through interactive voice response systems. And there's also a on-site rep for the life of the contract. In addition, we have to comply with any healthcare mandates that come down from the federal government. Current healthcare plan today, we're self-insured, self-administered. We have no additional reinsurance or stop loss. We network through multi-plan, the PHCS. Our employee premiums are up there and some other plan specifics, but the employees share is 12.5% and 25% for dependents. The blended rate is there for the other tiers at 19, 20, and 21%. There's separate out-of-network deductible for prescriptions, and you can see the other information there on the plan. Our profile is
pretty much a small plan for an agency. It's we provide access for our retirees after 10 years of service. So they also, if they're over 65, they can stay on the plan. They receive a 25% discount when they reach Medicare age at 65. So roughly, we're looking at about 85% participation from active employees and 35% from our retirees. You double the plan with the dependents on the plan, so we're looking at about 3,200 total. So our recommendations are as follows. We are recommending Aetna as a third-party administrator. They were challenged, and they have committed to work with our DBE office to report local DBE and SBE spend, and I'm going to introduce a representative from Aetna at the end of my presentation to expand on that discussion. We use Catamaran currently as our prescription benefit manager, and they proposed, and it was the best proposal for us to remain with that vendor. It's going to provide no disruption to our employees, and it was a good option for us. Currently, the Affordable Care Act passed in 2010, and we've kind of taken a backseat to all the changes, and we stayed a grandfathered plan, which means that we didn't change anything for our employees. We didn't cover preventative, we didn't change deductibles, we didn't change the cost sharing, so there was no bad experience for the plan. So we're proposing to remove that next year, and that's going to open up all of the screenings that have been allowed for adults, women, and children. In addition, we hadn't changed the cost share in 5 years, and our goal was to increase that up to 15% and 30% employee and dependent coverage. We also noticed the need to grant a discount to retirees who become disabled under Social Security and they're under 65. So I mentioned earlier that we had the 65 age discount, but we have some retirees that are already on Medicare, so we'd like to provide that discount to them as well. These are financials. Of course, the employees do share in the premiums and the retirees. Just to keep in mind that our plan year is a calendar year and our fiscal year starts next month. So this is for the plan year starting in January. This is a side-by-side comparison, and like I mentioned, we would stay with one plan. There's certain mandates that are required by the government. For instance, the out-of-pocket max, it's basically unlimited if there's a lot of dependents, but next year it's going to be capped at 13,200. I mentioned the preventive visits next year would be covered. There's some other minor changes, but one of the big ones is that the out-of-pocket max right now doesn't include the deductible or the prescription deductible, and next year it's mandated to include that. So that out-of-pocket max is going to be hit a lot sooner by our employees. So the overall benefits, we're looking at no increase to the premiums, which is pretty much unheard of. We've had increases every year. I mentioned the maximum out-of-pocket. The preventive is going to be 100% covered, and the deductible is going to be included. We're also, in the RFP, we wanted to incorporate the whole wellness and disease management, wellness coaching. So we're going to be offering that to our employees and retirees, and that's going to help them manage their own health and help VA manage the long-term costs. I mentioned some technology changes. There's also some web tools and some additional mobile apps that'll be available. So this is the employee summary. This is a monthly premium. You can see the different tiers there. There's no change, no increase to the premium, and we were able to move the cost sharing to share that responsibility going forward. The retirees are going to see a significant decrease at 17%, and I mentioned the discount for retirees that are already on Medicare who are disabled. So there's the actual dollars, and they're broken out in pre and post 65 and the separate tiers.
monthly cost.
Yes, sir. So our next steps are to begin retiree and employee sessions next month. Our open enrollment period is in November, and our plan year begins in January. A lot of this information has been passed on to the ATU, the local. We meet with the retiree board as well, and they were satisfied with the information that we presented. Recommending board action is to authorize the president and CEO to negotiate and award a contract with the following: to provide healthcare administration services for 5 years, Aetna for third-party administration services, and Catamaran for pharmacy benefit manager services. Now, if it so pleases the board, I'd like to introduce Louis Heerwagen. He's going to expand on that commitment on the DBE-SBE portion.
Question, please. Please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Louis Heerwagen with Aetna, and we're pleased to be considered by staff and by this board to help you with your health benefits going forward. Aetna, in the division that submitted this proposal, is the public sector division for Aetna. So we do work across San Antonio and Texas with public entities. We're exclusively supporting public entities. So locally here, Bexar County is an Aetna customer, CPS is an Aetna customer. Across Texas, Harris County, City of Fort Worth, City of Houston. So a lot of big public entities that we have experience with meeting their goals for MWE or for DBE spend. We are committed to diversity, both in our workforce and in our activities that we serve, in the communities that we serve. Locally, we have about 310 employees, primarily in the service center at Callahan and 410. 67% of those employees are women. It's customer service operations, so a lot of ladies do that work. In the communities we work, we do spend a lot of time also focusing on racial and ethnic disparities of care and how we can bring technology and support to the physicians in those communities. We think that reporting spend for disadvantaged businesses, small businesses, SWIMBY, is an appropriate part of a government relationship like we've proposed to your organization. You know, we and all the entities we work with, or most of them, routinely meet with their DBE departments, report our activities, get their guidance on maybe key vendors that we might utilize. Bexar County, as an example, we probably do at least $200,000 in just a couple of things alone, the biometric screening and chiropractic services. Those are areas where we do use disadvantaged businesses. So as a part of our commitment to this organization, certainly that's, we would welcome the opportunity for that to be a part of our contract. And it's really kind of the way that most government entities do business with vendors like ourselves. You know, applaud you for the great programs you've offered your employees in the past. You've had a history of a great benefit plan that you've offered your employees. This would be a big change to move away from a self-administered model, but we see that we'll help you kind of build on that program, take it to the next level, and enhance it going forward. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, that conclude the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, and you recommend approval of this. Do we have a motion on this item? We have a motion and a second to approve. Are there any comments or questions? I would like to know how much are we spending a year? My understanding was we're going to save about $2 million a year with this change, with a TPA, third-party administrator. And so how much were we spending this year and how much do we project to spend next year? That was the budget for healthcare program.
The administration number we were looking at was about $500,000. With just the TPA services, we're looking closer to $900,000. But the addition of the stop loss is something that we've never covered before, and that's a 1-year commitment or guarantee. That's about 1.4 million. Our prescription benefit is not going to change. It's pretty much about the same. It's about 70,000. We have a flat administration charge.
I'm not talking about administration, I just want to know the total cost of delivering health insurance to our employees.
Go to your chart.
Everything.
Can I answer that question? Because I have the information right here.
That includes what we paid to the providers, what
Joel,
we paid for administration.
don't bother going through that because that's not really the budget, I don't think. Huh? I can answer that question. Go ahead. Yeah, I can do it.
Well, I hope somebody can.
Go ahead, you start. You have the table, you go and explain what it is.
This plan,
Your
as I
presentation.
mentioned earlier, it's the plan year cost, and I believe Steve took 75% of that savings.
Yes.
And the budget in VIA's budget is around 11.6. Give or-
75 improvement cushion.
Okay.
And so that includes the 17.2 million is how much currently projected.
Right.
And 14.2 million is projected for next year, or a savings of $3 million.
Right.
And so does that include the cost of administration?
Yes.
Okay, and so the proposed cost of administration for next year is how much? The contract with Aetna is for how much?
It's going to be under 900,000, Fred.
Okay, and we're currently paying 500,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, good, thank you.
I do have one question. In the beginning, you mentioned that what is self-care and the Affordable Care Act, you really didn't know much about that or be in total compliance with it, because I know I've heard 100 different things about it, so with the third-party vendor, are we in total compliance with the Affordable Care Act as we know today?
Moving forward, we will be with the vendor, but we are in compliance now. We were a grandfathered plan. There were certain notice requirements that we had to submit out to our employees, and those have been submitted on an annual basis, basically. There's new taxes that VIA is being responsible for that we've had to comply with, and we're looking to comply with going forward. There's reporting requirements that are changing next year also with the different taxes. So we are in compliance, and we plan to be going forward.
And so, again, the savings are going to be primarily from Aetna's ability to negotiate reduced
Better discounts.
reimbursement rates for the various providers,
Yes, sir.
because they have a broader base.
That is the
That's the
short
advantage.
version of that entire presentation.
You summed it up well.
Speaking as a former city manager.
And as I understand it, next year, when we fully adopt the Affordable Care Act, there will be preventative health measures that will be without cost to our employees, and all of their expenses will be attributed to their cap. And so the Affordable Care Act, as applied to VIA employees, is better than what they had before.
True.
And we are going to be spending less than what we spent before.
It's a fair statement.
Yes, we're getting
Thank you.
more for less.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen. Okay, that brings us to item number 13, which is our January service improvements.
Good evening, Chair, Board. I'm Tracy Manning, the Manager of Service Planning and Scheduling. And for the budget that you passed earlier to increase service, this is, as soon as we can do it, is in January, our next sign-up. And so we're going to be having some frequency improvements, a small change to the Route 534 in Castle Hills. And the routes that are impacted cover, it's over 22% of our total system. And so we're improving, as I said, the frequency and the one route, and its approximate cost is $3 million annually. The geographic spread of the improvements that, the routes that we're hitting, you can see covers most of the city. And these are the routes. So in the frequency right now, going from 30-minute base or midday service, going to 20-minute base. On the 2 Blanco route, the 34 South St. Mary's route, the 82 Culebra, the 51 Nogalitas, and also the 534 midday service goes to 20-minute. And then there is that small change where it's going to be going on Military Highway through Castle Hills, not Lock Hill, Selma. That's the small route change. And then for those that were improving the peak service, that's the 5 McCullough, goes out to the airport, the 30 Rigsby, the 88 Bandera, and the 42 Roosevelt. And the Looper, right? That's our largest route in our system, carries the most riders. It'll be going to 20 minutes in the peaks also. And then this is a 60-minute route that will be going to 30 minutes in the peak, the 609 that goes from Ingram to mainland. This route, the golden part of that route on the top is the trunk portion, and so that will be moving from 30 minutes now to 20 minutes. And that's all day. It's because we're making actual 3 branches out of what used to be 2 branches. And that's all of our changes. If you have any questions, be happy to answer.
Thank you. We have action proposed?
Yes, well, no, not yet.
No, this is,
Not yet. This is a briefing. We go to public hearing on these changes, I think, October 1st.
October 1 and October 6.
This is
Okay.
information.
And then
only.
after we have the public hearing and take those comments into account, we will return to the board to approve the final package.
And so were these service improvements included in the 3.8% increase in service that we're projected for the budget?
Yes, they are the bulk of the 3.8 that we're
So
putting
this is
in upfront as quickly as we can.
And I think we're addressing one of the key things, feedback that we get is that sometimes it's too long between buses, and so
Absolutely.
this shortens that time frame, and it's throughout, as you have that, if you could put up that map, it shows the citywide, community-wide coverage. You can see it covers throughout the community, all sectors of the community, and I think that's important as well.
So, yeah.
Any additional comments or questions? Tex?
I would like to meet with you later on, just discuss some other kind of thoughts and recommendations from both city council members I've spoken to and also my own kind of ideas. I want to make sure that, we are setting a very good tone here, I'm not doubting that, but I also want to make sure there's the ability to maybe add a couple of things or amend a couple of things in this as well.
Yeah, I think if we're going to ultimately, are we going to actually formally approve these ultimately?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so,
And so
between
we're
now and
go-
then, we'll have the opportunity to visit with you, Tex, or anybody else who may want to have a briefing and get better understanding.
So we're going through
I
a
do
public
think
comment period, so for sure, yeah, we'd like to hear what you have.
Great. And so we'll be coming back next month with this?
Yes, we will be.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions? Anybody? Thank you very much for that presentation. The next 2 items, item 14, item 15, I had a visit today with Dr. Gambetta, and as you all know, Dr. Gambetta has been ill and not available and has not been here for discussion on some of these items. And he asked, he'd like to participate in that discussion, and he asked if we could postpone moving forward on these. For example, on the renaming of the Westside Multimodal Transit Center, where he said it was his understanding that in the past, and we all know how we struggled with that last week, but apparently it was at one point in the past it was discussed to have 2 separate names, one for the Transit Plaza and one for the building, for the train station, for the depot, and that was discussed by the board at one point. We have 2 new trustees. Dr. Gambetta hasn't been here, and so maybe that's something that we need to take another look. I know we've gone over that branding and naming issue for a while. Last week there was only 5 of us here, I believe, when we finally approved it. We barely had a quorum. That was 5 out of the 9 appointees at that time, and so I don't think there was a exploding support, for where we were, and so I think I would recommend that we go ahead and postpone that. And the second item on the consolidation committee meetings, one. Okay. You want to just go ahead and postpone that as well? Okay, great. Let's do that then. So we'll postpone both those?
His motion was to postpone the first one. Was your motion to postpone just? Yeah.
Oh, the naming? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And now on the consolidation of the committee meetings, one of the things we had talked about was again trying to minimize the discussion in multiple committee meetings of the same issues. On the other hand, there are issues that came forward that some of us maybe didn't get a chance to review because we weren't on that particular committee. You know, as an example, one of the items on the agenda today in the consent agenda was changing of service at the West Side Multimodal Center. And I'm sure that was discussed in the Operations Committee somewhere in the past couple of weeks. But I have no idea what was in there, and I didn't get a chance to understand that very well. And I would have liked to. I think important, and the same thing with financials. They all get presented at the Operations and Financial Oversight Committee. I think it's something that the whole board needs to have a good handle on, and that's on the consent agenda as well. And so that was the idea, was to maybe consolidate some of those meetings and do that. But what we have the risk of losing, and we saw that today with the huge agenda that we had, is an in-depth review of some of these issues. And the committees provided that type of a resource. And that was Dr. Gambetta's concern. And again, in recognition of the fact that we have some new trustees and Dr. Gambetta's absence and his perspective, I would recommend that we go ahead and postpone that for a month as well. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to postpone that as well. Any discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. And that brings us to our last item, which is our executive session, legal briefing. And these were just placeholders, nothing imminent there? Okay, good.
sir.
If that's the case,
Motion.
then we're done with our agenda. Now we're going to move to the ATD agenda.
Second.
You guys, we had 2 meetings in one night. We just finished the MTA meeting. We adjourned
Now we'll start a new one.
the MTA meeting, and now we're going to start the ATD board meeting, Advanced Transportation District Board meeting. Calling that to order. I don't think we need to reflect anymore, or we don't need to pledge again. We don't have any, I don't think we have any additional announcements.
I have no additional.
That brings us to the item number 3, the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. That then brings us to strategic initiatives. That was already approved before. It's the same.
Correct, it's the
strategic initiatives.
same product.
It would have been the same presentation, and so we don't need to go over that again as well, because that was, those changes were implicit in the action we took at the last board meeting, and they apply to the Advanced Transportation District as well.
Motion.
Second.
Just in case, is that okay with you all? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, that brings us then to the fiscal year 2015 budget and 5-year financial plan, and we actually have to take a separate action on this item, if I'm not mistaken.
Because there is an ATD element of the operating budget.
And so the ATD element of the operating budget
Note up there.
needs to be reviewed. Do we need a presentation on that?
Actually, it was in the presentation.
It was in the other that's what I
Keith
thought.
broke those 2 pieces out.
Are there any questions on that from that budget presentation? If you recall, when we approved that, it had 2 sections. One was MTA, one was the ATD. This takes official action as a board of the ATD on the ATD dollars. And so, is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
A motion, a second. Are there any comments or questions on that?
I would just like to stress that the ATD dollars, that the distribution of which and the use of which is a much greater area.
No doubt about it. And I think that that's important to recognize that and for our new trustees as well, that the ATD revenues, which comes from that quarter-cent sales tax, half of them come to VIA, and then a fourth of them go to Bexar County, used in conjunction with TxDOT, and a fourth go to the city of San Antonio. Okay, we then have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Legal briefing on this one?
No, sir.
No legal briefing. If that's the case, unless there are objections,
Move we adjourn.
we're going to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn, a second? In favor? Aye. We're adjourned.